Chapter 973. In the northern frontier, the Li brothers had a tacit understanding. Qiao Wuying, who was in the south, sneezed. He turned his gaze to Qin Ping and asked doubtfully, "Are you sure the one behind you didn't see wrong? That Black Jiao will leave the Endless Sea soon and regain control of the northern frontier?" Qin Ping nodded helplessly and said, "You've asked this question 7 times. Even if you're not annoyed, I'm annoyed. That person said very clearly that the Black Jiao's plan in the Endless Sea is coming to an end. What it needs to do next is to accumulate strength and wait for the right time to enter the Endless Sea to reap the fruit that belongs to it. Therefore, it won't be long before the Black Jiao returns to the northern frontier and sweeps away the haze of the northern frontier. After resting for a while, it will lead its army down south to swallow all the former territories of the Shenwu dynasty." Speaking to here, he paused. His gaze was somewhat playful. He smiled and said, "Therefore, if you don't do it now, when the Black Jiao returns, whether the so-called Three Kings theory is true or not will be up to him. If you don't take advantage of this time to settle everything, even if we take care of the Black Jiao, you won't be able to fight against Li Zhong, who is deeply rooted in the northern frontier. Who told you to choose to develop in the south alone instead of staying at the core of the northern frontier to increase your influence?" A bitter smile appeared on Qiao Wuying's face under the helmet. The king of the northern frontier was a very dangerous position. Power was the sweetest poison in the world. No matter who it was, it would not be easy to get rid of it. Therefore, the king would not submit to others for too long. However, Li Zhong was obviously an exception. He seemed to be uninterested in how much power he had. Even as the king of the northern frontier, he regarded every command of the Black Jiao as extremely important. He carefully pondered over the possible meaning of the command, carefully and rationally restrained himself, not giving the Black Jiao any reason to kill him. In all fairness, Li Zhong was an extremely terrifying opponent. Even someone as ambitious as Qiao Wuying could not be sure if one day he lost the control of Lin Yuan, who had always restrained himself from making mistakes, what kind of power would he explode with? In Lin Yuan's previous life, there was a person like Li Zhong. He was called Hua Guang, Hua Tsubing's half-brother of a different mother, and Chang Han's closest relative. He was the only person who had usurped power and lived to the end of his life, like Dong Zhuo. This person, like Dong Zhuo, he had deposed an emperor. This half-brother of Hua Tsubing had shown great restraint to gain the trust of the Hanwu emperor when he was young, when Hua Tsubing recommended him to be an official. The 38th chapter of Hua Guang Jin's biography of Hua Guang was recorded as follows. Hua Guang went out and served the emperor for 20 years. He was careful and had never met a trusted aide. A cautious and restrained person would naturally gain the trust of Emperor Wu of Han. Therefore, Emperor Wu of Han entrusted Hua Guang to him on his deathbed. Hua Guang did his best to assist Emperor Zhao of Han for a total of 12 years. At this point, whether he was poisoned by power or had lost his fear, it was also at this time that Hua Guang revealed his ferocious side. He deposed the prince of Chang'e, Lu He, and brought Lu Bing, a descendant of the Han dynasty who was scattered among the commoners, into the palace. Lu Bingji was not that famous. Not to mention the emperor of Han, he could not even compare to Emperor Xian of the Three Kingdoms. However, when Emperor Xian was on the throne, he sent out 150,000 troops to attack the Xiongnu people. Coupled with the snow disaster, the Xiongnu people suffered heavy casualties. After the Han dynasty won, he set up the Xianding Hu tablet. The famous sentence, "Where the sun and moon shine, where the river flows, it is the land of the Han," came from this. Although the Xianding Hu tablet was destroyed by the Xiongnu people, it was later written by Ban Biao to Lu Xiu. The Han dynasty rules over all the countries. Where the sun and moon shine, they are all my concubines. This sentence was derived from the Xianding Hu tablet. And such an emperor, who was said to be the best in the two Han dynasties, even the emperor of Han dynasty, Liu Che, could not compare to him. However, under the suppression of Huoguang, he could only imitate Huoguang when he was young. He sat on the dragon throne and stared at Huoguang. He was cautious, but he did not make any mistakes. He did not give Huoguang any reason to dethrone him. And this silent battle between the royal family and the relatives ended with Emperor Xian of Han's victory. After all, Emperor Xian of Han was much younger than Huoguang. It was only 2 years after Huoguang's death that Emperor Xian of Han completely removed the power that Huoguang left behind. Although Qiao Wuying did not know that Huoguang was such a ruthless person. But he grew up in the palace, and when he grew up, he lived among the common people and suffered hardship. Later on, he took over the northern part of the Xunwu dynasty's intelligence work. He could be considered to have seen countless people. With just one look, he could see that Li Zhong was a restrained person. In fact, he had great desires. Once he lost control, there might not be many people in the entire northern frontier who could go against Li Zhong. What Zhu Wuying did not know was that not only he was afraid of Li Zhong, even Lin Yuan was slightly afraid of Li Zhong. It was just that no one pointed this out. The king of the northern frontier was still the king of the northern frontier, and the Black Water Dragon King was still the Black Water Dragon King. But the problem is, Zhu Wuying licked his dry lips and said in a low voice, "The Guardian of the Elysium has restricted the Sky Demon's range of activity. And the Sky Demon's side obviously does not have enough power to break this rule. But it is not only them who are restricted. The northern frontier and us are all within the restrictions. Even if I bring these cultivators and common people, there is no place for us to stand." Chen Ping lowered his head slightly and did not speak. The northern frontier was under Li Zhong's control. If he brought these cultivators and common people to the northern frontier, it would be hard to say for the cultivators, but these common people would not be able to return. If they had a choice, they would not give up the heaven-like northern frontier. Instead, they would choose to face the threat of the demonic beasts, the Sky Demon, and the Qing River Army and rebuild their home. After a moment, Chen Ping shrugged and said, "This is a problem you should consider. After all, you are the one who wants power. We are just partners who each want what we need. And your request for us is only to cure the poison in your body, not to help you become the new king. So let's be frank. If you can't solve this problem, then bring your people back to the northern frontier. Don't expect us to solve these problems for you. Moreover, the Sky Demon is not difficult to deal with for that person, but the source of the Sky Demon is troublesome. Even that person has to be wary of that person. Moreover, the source of the Sky Demon does not have a high status in the world he comes from. That person does not want to be involved in the karma there. Otherwise, do you think the Black Jiao could have lived until today? Do you think you are qualified to cooperate with us?" Chapter 974. While they were talking, on the surface of the Wei River, 2 slender figures were treading on the water. Clang! Qiao Wuying only glanced at the newcomers, and the long sword at his waist was already unsheathed. His eyes under the mask suddenly shrank to the size of needles. The leader was a young man wrapped in a black robe. His facial features could be considered handsome, but with just one glance, people would forget his face. This was because at this time, people who looked at him would often be attracted by his mysterious and luxurious purple eyes and ignore everything else. His long silver hair hung down from his back, forming a sharp contrast with the black robe he was wearing. The other person followed closely behind the purple-eyed youth. He was also wrapped in a black robe, and his face could not be seen clearly. However, the temperament on his body was unusually eye-catching. He was crazy but maintained absolute rationality. The 2 completely opposite temperaments were strangely harmonious on his body. Qiao Wuying had only seen one person like this. The northern frontier, the governor of the bright uniform guards, Luo Su. Why would one of the Black Jiao's subordinates appear here? Even if the northern frontier sent people to receive these southern cultivators and ordinary people, they should be some students from the Northern Frontier Academy or officials working in the local government. Even if Li Zhong came personally, it should not be Luo Su, the head of the Secret Service. Don't be agitated, they are our people. Chen Ping stretched out his hand and pressed down on Qiao Wuying's arm, slowly pressing down the right hand that was holding the sword. Your people. Qiao Wuying was slightly taken aback. His mouth opened to the extent that an egg could be stuffed directly into it. He knew the purple-eyed youth. He was Lei Fan of the Lei royal family branch. His ability was not bad, and he was promoted from the branch by Lei Qiusheng. Originally, he was going to Mountain Blocking City to gain experience for a few years before being transferred to other places. However, his luck was not too good, and he met the Black Jiao, an existence that could not be described with common sense. He was first the king of the northern frontier, and later, because he coveted more power, he was killed by Lin Yuan. As for how Lei Fan came back from the dead, Qiao Wuying was not interested. With that person's means, no matter how difficult the problem was, as long as he thought of a way, it could always be solved. But Luo Su Jiwuying was afraid of Luo Su. After all, Luo Su's power and influence in the northern frontier was second only to Lin Yuan. Especially after Sherdong was found to be in cahoots with the Sky Demon, Luo Su directly reached the peak of his power. When necessary, he would turn hostile and not even give face to Li Zhong. Such a person was actually a subordinate of that person? Here comes the problem. How many of the Black Jiao's subordinates hadn't joined him? Seeing Qiao Wuying's doubtful gaze, Luo Su's eyes twitched slightly. With his wisdom and experience, it was not difficult to see what Qiao Wuying was thinking. He also wanted to tell Qiao Wuying that in the entire northern frontier, there were not many people who had betrayed the Black Jiao. After all, that person who hid behind the scenes and played tricks had never shown how powerful he was. On the other hand, the Black Jiao had been constantly creating miracles in the past 2 to 3 years, and had almost established an undefeated reputation. Even the Sky Demon, who even the Guardians of the Heaven Gate were helpless against, had to suffer in the northern frontier. To the natives of the Heaven Martial World, what kind of terrifying battle record was this? Therefore, among the traders of the northern frontier, apart from those aristocratic families, there were only a few ambitious people, and a fool like Qiao Wuying. But thinking about it from another perspective, whether he was coerced or voluntary, he had indeed betrayed the northern frontier. With the Black Jiao's personality, he would definitely not let himself have a good ending. And standing in this position, it was difficult to say such words to attack Qiao Wuying. After all, in his eyes, this person was as stupid as Lei Fan back then. They both wanted the power that they should have but could not have. And among the people with real power in the northern frontier, only Qiao Wuying had taken the initiative to join the northern frontier. Changing his mind, Luo Su simply turned his head away, too lazy to look at Qiao Wuying. Lei Fan did not have so many misgivings. No matter whether it was in terms of background or status, he crushed the current Qiao Wuying. So, right from the beginning, he had not paid any attention to Qiao Wuying, and his attention was always on Chen Ping. He said calmly, "The situation in the northern frontier is not good now. No one would have expected that the Black Jiao would suddenly make a trip back to the northern frontier. So, that person had said that we cannot rule out the possibility that we have already been exposed. It would be useless to continue plotting against the northern frontier, and we can only start from the south. How are your preparations coming along?" Chen Ping looked at Lei Fan silently, and did not reply immediately. Lei Fan's brows creased up slightly, and his right hand swiped across his waist, taking out a pitch-black pouch. Throwing it out, he said, "You are actually a demonic beast as well, aren't you?" It's fine if mortals value this item highly, but this item is of no use to us at all. Even if we use it to refine weapons, we will find it cumbersome. Furthermore, if you want gold and silver, you can easily obtain countless of them. Yet, you insist on using this kind of transaction to accumulate gold and silver. I don't even know if I should say that you are being pretentious, or that you are abiding by the rules. Chen Ping stretched out his hand to catch the pouch, and took out a small yellow croaker and placed it in his mouth to bite on it. Instantly, he beamed with joy and tossed the black pouch in his hand, weighing its weight. Only then did he nod his head and say, "All of you should be clear about the situation in the south. The Sky Demon has suffered at the northern frontier, and he will definitely try to make up for it in other places. Then, he will see if there is an opportunity to have a decisive battle with the northern frontier. But now, with the Heaven's Gate Protector keeping an eye on this side, no one can break the rules. So, the Sky Demon can only go south. Now, it's just a matter of whether he will move overseas or to the northern frontier." Saying that, he looked at Ji Wuying's ugly expression and then continued, "But the problem is that he does not have the confidence to defeat Li Zhong, so he does not wish to bring his people and move to the northern frontier. Yet, he does not have the means to fight against the Sky Demon alone, so, with us helping you, would you still be afraid of a mere Li Zhong?" Lei Fan's brows furrowed even tighter, a puzzled look on his face. The corner of Chen Ping's mouth curled up, and he said with a cold smile, "This fellow is suffering from paranoia. To put it bluntly, he was scared witless by Lei Qiusheng a few years ago. So, be it the Black Jiao or us, in his eyes, there is no difference at all. We are all people who want to encroach on his power. So, he wants us to help him clear out a piece of territory, but does not want us to share the fruits of victory with him. That's it." "All right." Luo Su, who had come along with Lei Fan, patted his bandaged face and said in a deep voice, "I can contact a group of purgatory demonic beasts. They have an alliance with the Sky Demon, and if it is to deal with the Black Jiao and the northern frontier, I think the Sky Demon will be very willing to make concessions. Moreover, we do not have much time now. We need to settle everything before the Black Jiao finishes setting up the Endless Sea and returns to the northern frontier." Lei Fan's face did not show any joy or sorrow, and he only said, "That person has urged us more than once." Chapter 975. Through the connection of the scripture of all living beings, although Lin Yuan was in the city of trade, he knew every move of Lei Fan and the other three like the back of his hand. A pair of blue and white eyes turned slightly, Lin Yuan shook his head lightly and sighed, "Their plan is not bad. They want to set up the three kings before I return to the northern frontier. At that time, Ji Wuying will be in the central plains and face the northern frontier. I have spent so much effort and played such a big game of chess, but it did not benefit the northern frontier at all. Instead, it became nourishment for the northern frontier to cultivate a powerful opponent. Division, betrayal and wasted effort, all these negative emotions piled up together and finally made my mind waver, giving that guy a chance to take advantage of. Unfortunately, reality is many times crueler than illusions, my friend. If the immortals left the northern frontier, with their characteristics, it would not be a problem for them to wipe out the Sky Demon army. Although they could not kill them all, it would be easy for them to drive the Sky Demon out of the central plains and drive him to the almost empty south. At the same time, they could use the Sky Demon to delay Lin Yuan's return to the northern frontier. Before this problem was solved, the fruits of victory in the Endless Sea had not ripened yet. Even if they did, Lin Yuan would not be able to use this victory to connect the northern frontier and the Endless Sea. Plus the cooperation of the Sky Demon and the southern wasteland, it would be easy to push Lin Yuan into a desperate situation. In a trance, Lin Yuan seemed to see a figure shrouded in a black fog slowly reach out and place a piece on the invisible chessboard. Then, the figure whispered, "Kill!" Well, that was not wrong. If the person behind Lei Fan's plan was to succeed step by step, Lin Yuan and the northern frontier would fall into a passive situation. But the question was, how could he succeed? Lei Fan's entire plan was based on the southern cultivators, the southern aristocratic families who were willing to join the northern frontier, and the northern frontier aristocratic families who were willing to cooperate with him. Lin Yuan did not know what the southern cultivators and aristocratic families would think. But the aristocratic families of the northern frontier? They were just a bunch of people who were scared out of their wits. After massacring well-known families in the northern frontier, those people had long realized that the most important thing to do if they wanted to survive in the northern frontier was that each individual or group had to abide by the rules of their own circle. Therefore, none of the well-known families in the northern frontier were ambitious enough to annex the land, seize it by force, or promote their status by fair means or foul. For the great clans, strength meant greater ambition and desire. But in the eyes of the people of the northern frontier, these two things could directly invite death, no, a calamity that could wipe out an entire clan. Nowadays, the northern frontier aristocratic families were proud of being weak. It was laughable and ironic. Compared to the aristocratic families in other places, they were the complete opposite. But this was the cruel reality. The northern frontier did not keep the aristocratic families quiet. But once the aristocratic families showed their fangs, the northern frontier would definitely use thunderous means to wipe them out. After the initial period, in the eyes of the northern frontier, the aristocratic families were only different in terms of value. There was no trade-off or compromise. Once the aristocratic families were found to have disloyal intentions, they would destroy them no matter the cost. The aristocratic families of the northern frontier had lost more than once or twice. The destruction of powerful aristocratic families was like an alarm bell that kept ringing in their mind. Especially when Li Xian took over the throne, the massacre that shocked the entire Shunning city. In the hands of the embroidered uniform guards, the aristocratic families were as weak as sheep waiting to be slaughtered. The disciples that they had high hopes for were curled up in the academies of the northern frontier and the local government offices, not daring to make a sound. Even if there were a few who stood out, their target was not the embroidered uniform guards, but the aristocratic families. This was the current northern frontier, a place where all the power was firmly in the hands of the king, and the king was below the gods. Unless Lin Yuan died, it would be difficult for them to have any ambitions. To kill Lin Yuan, they would undoubtedly need the cooperation of the aristocratic families of the northern frontier. But if Lin Yuan did not die, the aristocratic families of the northern frontier would definitely not cooperate. No matter what Lei Fan and the others said, those who were scared out of their wits would not believe them. Lin Yuan did not deny that the other party's plan was very strong. Once it was completed, it would definitely bring about a psychological blow to him. But the entire plan was wrong from the start. Not to mention the link to kill Lin Yuan, even the plan would be difficult to complete. But that guy shouldn't be so naive. Is it a smokescreen, or has he prepared something else? Lin Yuan muttered softly. Then, he changed the topic and said in a deep voice, "But now is not the time to care about such things. His strength might be far above mine. Only by taking a step further can I kill him. So, dog system, come out and do your work." "Ill system. I've been offended. But after all, there were rules. Even if the system was unhappy with Lin Yuan, it still had to give out the rewards on time." The countdown for the second stage of the mission Eliminate the Great Old One has ended. There are 706 people who have reached the target. The rewards will be given out soon. All hosts, please continue to work hard. One chance to ignite the divine flame. The reward has been given out. Instilling 500 million Joss flames. Instilling complete. The reward has been given out. The second stage of the mission Eliminate the Great Old One has been completed. All rewards have been given out. Next, the final stage of the mission will begin. Name: Eliminate the Great Old One type. Mandatory mission for all hosts. Number of participants: 706 people. Progress of the second stage of the mission: 1%. Final stage: Eliminate the weeds by the roots. Whose speed: All hosts have successfully completed the mission of eliminating the Great Old One. The next thing to do is to eliminate the weeds by the root. Completely eliminate the Great Old One that you have lured out and ensure that it does not leave any remnants in the world. Beep. Time limit has been cancelled. Beep. Mission failure penalty has been cancelled. Beep. Mission completion reward has been cancelled. Congratulations, everyone. Even if you ignore this mission, there will be no punishment, because you are all winners. Rejoice, for the sake of surviving, rejoice to your heart's content. Lin Yuan was speechless. Looking at the series of words in his mind, he could only remain silent. Otherwise, what else could he say? Stingy and searching? The first stage of the mission had brought about the growth of a large realm, a heaven-level cultivation technique, and 200 million Joss flames. He didn't know if he was really lucky or if the system had manipulated him, but in any case, it definitely surpassed the heaven-level cultivation technique. And this time, the reward of one chance to ignite the divine flame and 500 million Joss flames was actually not a small amount. 1,000,000 Joss flames was enough to summon a big shot whose strength was stuck at the peak of this world for a minute, and 500 million Joss flames was enough for the big shot to plow through the entire sky martial world. Unless they encountered those prehistoric creatures that also had strength that exceeded the limits of the sky martial world, otherwise, even the strongest native would only be able to last 3 rounds. And for an existence of this level, 3 rounds would only take an instant. Chapter 976. However, for some reason, Lin Yuan felt that the system was stingy. Why are you looking at me like that? This is how the rules work. What can I do about it? If I don't give you any punishment, it means that I can't give you too many rewards. Those rewards are not enough for such a compulsory mission. Therefore, I don't give you any rewards at all. Other people don't know the cost of money unless they are in charge. Don't tell me you are not in charge either? The northern frontier is such a big place. Officials of all ranks, teachers of the academy, resources given to students, military pay. These are the real money that you want to give out, right? If it weren't for the fact that the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce is about to collapse, would you have set your sights on the endless sea? Do you think that all my resources come from the wind? Besides, if it weren't for your problem, I wouldn't have initiated this compulsory mission at all. Those dead hosts were all unlucky people who were implicated by you. Most importantly, you cleaned up your own mess. Do you want me to reward you? Lin Yuan was silent for a moment. He turned his head and said, "Forget it. It's not important. Compared to those things, I'm more curious about what the so-called igniting of the divine fire is." Well, how should I put it? From the information in your mind, there were some igniting of the divine fire in the West in your previous life. However, it was only when you were strong enough that you came into contact with the power of the rules. If you could pass the trial set by the rules, you would be able to possess a certain amount of the power of the rules. In the East, this is called Tao Enlightenment. The igniting of the divine fire is also Tao Affirmation. Tao Affirmation? Lin Yuan's eyes suddenly flashed with a bright light. Tao Affirmation was a very mysterious thing. If it was in a low-level martial arts world, Tao Affirmation could be weak. However, for the primitive heavenly Tao, there was only one explanation for the so-called Tao Affirmation: to affirm the Chaos Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal. Compared to the Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal below the Sage to Be, the difference between the two was like heaven and earth, because the so-called Origin Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal was commonly known as a Sage. According to the information from the system, There were not many primordial chaos zenith heaven golden immortals in the untainted land. They either died or fled. Even a few who could challenge Hongjun had disappeared. After all, Hongjun was one with the way of heaven. Unless there was a balance of the origin of the way of heaven, Hongjun was absolutely invincible in the untainted land. Generally speaking, Hongjun was the only Chaos Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal who was still active. The reason why the 6 sages were not mentioned was that the 6 sages were heavenly Tao sages, not primordial Chaos Zenith Heaven Golden Immortals. The 6 sages were all managers selected by Hongjun. Their real realms were not sages, but Hongjun had entrusted their primordial spirits to the way of heaven, ensuring that they were as invincible as sages. Even if their physical bodies died, the primordial spirits entrusted to the way of heaven could still condense a physical body with the help of the way of heaven. They could also borrow the power of the way of heaven when fighting, but they could only be on par with ordinary primordial chaos zenith heaven golden immortals. They could not be as invincible as Hongjun in the untainted land. There was not much difference in strength between the heavenly Tao sages and the real sages. However, the heavenly Tao sages had an extremely fatal weakness. The further they were away from the untainted land, the thinner the power of the way of heaven they could borrow would be, and their strength would be weaker. After a certain distance from the untainted land, their primordial spirits entrusted to the way of heaven would be unable to control their bodies and would be pulled back into the way of heaven. Rather than calling them sages, it would be better to call them 6 prisoners who were kept captive by Hongjun to manage the untainted land. Therefore, Hongjun did not exist in the world of journey to the west created by Laozi and Haotian. Another heavenly primogenitor in Sanqing had always wanted to redefine the earth, wind, water, and fire and trace back to the origin in order to form a world of his own and get rid of the restraint of the way of heaven. However, both of them did not end well. In the God Investiture Tribulation, the tribe of Jie was destroyed. After that, Laozi became the Grand Supreme Elder of the Heavenly Court from the Master of the tribe of Ren. In fact, only the famous people on the list of deification would be bound to the heavenly court as officials. Even sages could not escape. However, sages were sages after all. Even if they were in the heavenly court, they could still kill Haotian and support Zhang Biren. In the God Investiture Tribulation, both Haotian and the Grand Supreme were losers. Most of the people in the heavenly court were the losers among the ancient mighty powers. They were restrained, restricted, and controlled by the so-called list of deification. The so-called heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals were mortal chi practitioners who obtained the immortal position in the heavenly court. They were originally different species derived from Hongjuan's original way of cultivation. Even if they had some achievements in cultivation, they could not compete with the mighty powers in the untainted age. As for the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals, they were far from having any achievements in cultivation. Instead, they had limited qualifications and had to submit to the heavenly court to be immortal. Once their immortal status was removed, they would die immediately. Therefore, in the heavenly court, the cruelest punishment for immortals was to remove their immortal status. Even someone as powerful as Tianping, the commander of the Heavenly River Navy, had his immortal status stripped away and could only obediently reincarnate. In the end, he still chose the path of the beast and became a pig. If not for Buddhism's scheme during the journey to the west, Tianping would have been completely crippled and might not even have the chance to become a demon. After all, Tianping reincarnated as a domestic pig. Becoming an immortal was not a blessing. However, under the propaganda of the heavenly court, most of the cultivators worked hard to ascend to the heavenly court. How ironic was that? Some people said that the journey to the west was a scam. In fact, the whole untainted world was a scam. Since Hongjun mastered the way of heaven, all the creatures in the untainted world were just playthings in his hands. Even the 6 sages could not escape the fate of being bound and controlled. As for the plot of the journey to the west, the reason why the monkey could create havoc in the heavenly court and look down on the world was just because of a sentence. The so-called breaking stubbornness requires wukong. Lie had deceived too many people, and everyone could tacitly allow the monkey to do whatever he wanted until the world of Buddhism intervened and completely shattered this dream. Lu Er replaced the monkey and became the victorious fighting Buddha? Oh, if it was really necessary, the monkey was not even qualified to set foot on the journey to the west. In the journey to the west, Lu Er and the monkey were evenly matched. When they arrived at the holy mountain, Lu Er was beaten back to his original form by Buddha's palm. Then, Lu Er was directly beaten to death by the monkey. It was also at that time that the monkey sadly realized that when those big shots in the heavenly court and earthly court did not go easy on him, the strength he was so proud of was just a palm. Therefore, after that, the monkey became obedient. From then on, the unruly monkey disappeared on the journey to the west. Or rather, the unruly monkey died together with Lu Er in the holy mountain. From then on, there was no equaling heaven sage of the eastern land, only the victorious fighting Buddha of the western land. Chapter 977. In the original text of the Journey to the West, the monkey had never fought in front of the Jade Emperor. The fact that it could fight its way to the southern heavenly gate was already the greatest tolerance of those big shots. Later generations only mentioned the dispute between Buddhism and Taoism, and then this matter was covered up. How many people knew that I had once transformed into a Buddha and set up the trap of Buddhism? Only a few people knew that after the monkey was recruited to the celestial court, he obediently raised horses and planted trees until the immortality peach banquet, when the monkey drank too much wine and caused a disaster. After that, the monkey walked fearlessly in the celestial court. Along the way, he didn't meet many celestial soldiers and celestial generals, let alone immortals. He staggered all the way. How many layers of heaven were there from his residence to the Tushita Palace? Why didn't the monkey, who drank too much wine, meet any celestial immortals? Was it really so coincidental that the Grand Elder wasn't in the Tushita Palace, and the Tushita Palace was filled with golden elixirs, so he didn't even leave a guard? Did he wait for the monkey to eat the golden elixirs and then give him a pair of fiery eyes of truth before asking the Buddha to suppress him? There were 2 other popular figures in the heavenly court, the third Prince Neza and the Erlang sage Yang Jian. Both of them were unruly and ruthless characters in their early years. However, there were not many stories about them, so they were just SOSO in the eyes of others. If they were not on par with the monkey, perhaps not many people would pay attention to them. However, compared with the tragic monkey, Yang Jian had always been in a state of spiritual concealment at the mouth of the Guan River. Neza obediently became the great god of the 3 jars of sea in Buddhism. They were totally different from their characters before they became gods. Most likely, like the monkey, they were aware of their own weakness and lamentable. What about me? Lin Yuan curled up his body. The monkey was indeed not that powerful. Later on, when he encountered some slightly more powerful demons on the way to the Mount Flowerfruit, he would be easily defeated. However, the monkey could also be considered as a genius. Back in Mount Flowerfruit, he was already a Yao King. After becoming a disciple of Tristar Slanted Moon Grotto, he cultivated the grand grade heavenly immortal technique. Add to that his extraordinary talent, his magic power was practically limitless. However, in the eyes of Tathagata, such an existence was nothing more than a palm. Then, what was Lin Yuan, who was not even a demon king, in the eyes of those powerful figures in the untainted land? Lin Yuan cleared his mind and asked, "So, the reward for this mission is to give me a test. If I pass it, I can directly become a primordial chaos Daluo golden immortal? Are you dreaming? If I have this ability, the hosts under my command will directly have Saint Even if Hongjun steals the heavenly Tao, he won't be able to fight against 10,000 saints. I didn't even have that ability when I was at my peak. At most, I could let a few living beings of the primordial world entrust their essence souls to the heavenly Tao. 6 saints was already the limit. However, the opportunity to ignite the divine fire depends on how you use it. If your realm is high enough, it can indeed save you the time to comprehend and directly come into contact with the power of the rules. However, I don't recommend using it this way. Throughout the countless years of the primeval age, there have been countless talents, but only a handful of primordial chaos cultivators have achieved the primordial chaos. After all, the power of the rules is not something that can be given to anyone. The so-called 3,000 primeval demon gods are merely 3,000 incarnations of the rules. 3,000 ancient fiend gods. Everyone was at the level of the god of creation. However, this level of existence was indeed weak in the eyes of the rules itself. After all, there were endless worlds outside the primeval age, and the power of the rules was pervasive. Whether the world was complete or not, there must be the existence of the rules. The so-called 3,000 ancient fiend gods were merely the manifestation of the power of the rules in the primeval age. For example, it was like Thanos, who had obtained 6 infinity stones and controlled the power of the entire universe in his hands. With a snap of his fingers, he could directly kill half of the living beings in the universe. The rules themselves were this level of power. They were undetectable, but they were everywhere. Then what's your suggestion? Lin Yuan was a little absent-minded. After all, this was a chance to directly become a primordial chaos Daluo golden immortal. Once he passed the trial set by the rules, then in the next moment, he would directly grow into an existence that could compete with Hongjun. He would not be like now, where he even dared to bully an outer god of unknown origin. Although this trial was extremely difficult, asking people to give up such an opportunity was no different from a mortal ascending to the heavens. There are 2 ways to ignite the divine fire. One is like what I said, to directly manifest the rules in your heart. After passing the test, you can directly become a primordial chaos Daluo golden immortal. However, since ancient times, there have been very few people who have been able to pass the trial. Even in the primeval age, almost all the existences with the strength of saints were born with their cultivation. And I suggest you choose the other way to ignite the divine fire, which is to give up the option that looks very tempting but has a high probability of losing both money and goods. You can keep it and use it as a consumable when necessary. Use the power of incense as fuel to ignite the divine fire for a time-limited buff. Before the power of incense you inject burns out, you can directly use the power of the rules. Consumable? Inject the power of incense? The corner of Lin Yuan's mouth twitched slightly. Sure enough, the system's bad character, like a Russian doll, probably could not be changed. Although the power of incense given out in the first stage of the mission was not used up directly, it was used up one after another in the subsequent events, especially when setting up the Empress Arsenal in the south. It was simply a huge drain on the power of incense. Those powerful skills from different worlds were not cheap, and there was also the universal scripture that could not be cultivated without the help of the system. The reward for the second stage of the mission was indeed more generous than the first stage. However, when igniting the divine fire became a consumable, Lin Yuan suddenly felt that 500 million power of incense was simply too little. However, nothing was absolute. Even Lin Yuan himself was not sure if he would encounter such a dangerous situation. Use the power of the rules? Lin Yuan lowered his head and looked at the flame mark that appeared on his white belly. His eyes revealed bitterness again. I don't think the natives of this world can force me to that extent. Lin Yuan was silent for a while before saying, if I need to use this thing one day, it will only be in the primeval age. However, by then, I might have already become a primeval age. What nonsense are you thinking? Do you think I should congratulate you in advance, or remind you not to dream? If the system had a physical body, the veins on its forehead might have popped out. By the way, if I really have to use the divine fire, will this thing really work? Will the borrowed power of the rules be random, or are there other rules? After all, it was something that he had to use to fight for his life. Lin Yuan asked carefully. Chapter 978. Be careful. The system soon began to display words. The two large blood-red words were clearly different from the way it had communicated with him before. Lin Yuan? Before he could even react, Lin Yuan suddenly felt his vision blur. The image of an old man wearing a long white robe suddenly appeared in Lin Yuan's mind. Caught you. He could not see the old man's lips moving, nor could he hear his voice. However, after the two of them looked at each other, Lin Yuan suddenly understood the meaning of the other party's words. It was extremely similar to the way he communicated with the system. Lin Yuan opened his mouth, but no sound came out. At this moment, the old man in white robes had already raised his right hand, aimed it at Lin Yuan, and lightly clenched it. Boom! Suddenly, Lin Yuan felt as if countless bombs had exploded in his mind. Other than a blank space, there was only a rumbling sound. The space began to collapse, and the world began to wail. Lin Yuan was directly lifted up by an invisible and abundant force. The hard black scales on his body began to crack, then turned into fine powder and slowly scattered. Golden blood was continuously squeezed out of Lin Yuan's body. However, Lin Yuan did not feel any pain. At this moment, he felt as if he was a bystander, standing to the side and watching himself being tortured, yet unable to do anything. Boom! Boom! Another two frightening forces emerged. One of them also came from the unseen world, and the other came from Lin Yuan's body. These two forces were completely different, yet there were some similarities. They faintly appeared to be joining forces to resist the power of the old man in white robes who was trying to kill Lin Yuan. However, when the three forces collided, they were evenly matched. Clearly, no one could do anything to the other. However, taking advantage of this gap, Lin Yuan's consciousness became much clearer. Although he was still unable to move, his mind was active. The will of the world and the system had to join forces to fight evenly with the other party? Who exactly was that white-robed old man? It seems that there is something wrong with the prehistoric creatures in this world. I have trained countless hosts to fight against Hongjun. Other than Luo Ho and Yizhu, who fought their way to Hongjun, the other hosts only faced the 6 sages at most. Moreover, they only met the 6 sages after fighting their way to the prehistoric world. Why is it that when it came to you, Hongjun personally attacked you before you could grow? The system's little head was obviously filled with big question marks. Hongjun? Lin Yuan was shocked. The white-robed old man didn't seem to be anything special. At most, he had a sage-like aura. However, his face seemed to have some kind of special magic. You could clearly see his face, but when you turned your face away, you would almost forget it. This old man was actually Hongjun? Was this a Chaos Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal who had fused with the Heavenly Tao? Lin Yuan actually didn't know how far the Heaven Martial world was from the prehistoric world. However, he knew that when Hongjun imprisoned the 6 sages and the creatures of the prehistoric world, he was also like a prisoner who could only guard the prehistoric world. Otherwise, once he left, the origin of the Heavenly Tao would return to the prehistoric world and regain control of the Heavenly Tao. At that time, it would join forces with the 6 sages and the creatures of the prehistoric world. Even Hongjun would have to flee to other worlds to avoid the danger. Therefore, Hongjun had always been very aggressive. Although he wanted to hunt down the creatures of the prehistoric world, he also wanted to conquer more worlds to provide incense power for himself. According to the universe theory of his previous life, the distance between 2 worlds was at least calculated in light years. However, the distance between these two unrelated worlds could be described as infinite. Even if a Chaos Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal left his own world, he wouldn't be able to easily cross the sea of suffering to find the world he wanted to go to. This distance was worthy of being called infinite. Therefore, across the infinite space, Hong Jun could directly project himself into my consciousness and crush me to death? What kind of terrifying power was this? Previously, the man in the white coat called by Lin Yuan had done something similar. He killed countless cultivators who were secretly spying on him. However, the difference between the two was not small. Every inch of distance between the two of them was a qualitative change. For example, the existence of the sword immortal level could kill people from 1,000 miles away as easily as taking something out of his pocket. The Tang Dynasty sword Sage Pei Min and First Madame Gong's son could throw their swords into the clouds hundreds of feet high. Looking back, the lost Yu Nu swordsmanship from the Warring States period was said to be able to destroy 3,000 soldiers with one sword. In the later period of the same era, Gunye also had the 100 Steps flying sword. However, although the latter examples could be called sword sages and sword grandmasters, they were still in the realm of mortals. Even if they could reach the peak, they couldn't be compared to the sword immortals who could control their swords for 1,000 miles. This was the difference between the man in the white coat and Hong Jun. If not for the system and the will of the world working together to resist, Hong Jun could easily crush him to death even if he was in the great desolate world. Although the man in the white coat's technique was terrifying, it was only displayed in the sky martial world. It was like the difference between throwing a sword and controlling it for 1,000 miles. At this moment, the collision of the three forces was coming to an end. Let's stop here for today. Hong Jun slowly put down his right hand. His gaze turned and once again looked at Lin Yuan. The scene in his consciousness suddenly disappeared. The power of the system and the will of the world also coincidentally returned to their formless state. Lin Yuan exhaled a long breath of foul air, and his eyes looked a bit gloomy. The palace he lived in had already collapsed under the collision of the three powerful forces. Lin Yuan, who was crushed under the rubble, could not find a single intact scale on his body. A large amount of pink flesh was exposed to the air. Pain assaulted him like a tidal wave. This enmity, I will remember it. Demonic energy surged, evaporating the golden dragon blood on his body. The scales on the surface of his body started to grow rapidly after losing the pressure. After his external injuries had more or less recovered, Lin Yuan's figure flashed. He smashed apart the debris piled on top of him. Twisting his body, he swam out as if nothing had happened. Only the countless gray-scaled flood dragon people and brave crab people who had rushed over were left behind. They stared at the rubble with dumbfounded expressions. That was a palace made of willow stones. Even if a demonic beast of the demonic king level attacked with all its might, it might not even leave a fist-sized mark. In the end, it had only been built for 2 months and it had collapsed, just like that. The Black Water Dragon King they were loyal to was only in the desolate demonic realm. But this destructive power, wasn't it a little too terrifying? In every corner of the sky martial world, countless experts' eyes were filled with shock. They looked in the direction of the endless sea without moving. Beads of cold sweat could be seen on their foreheads. To these cultivators who had already come into contact with the limits of the world, they could not even control their basic physiological reactions. It could be seen how shocked they were. Chapter 979. Lord Tian, did you see what happened over at the Endless Sea? One of the Elysium Guardians felt a chill run down his spine, fear still lingering on his face. The Elysium Guardians, who had died tragically for spying on the Black Jiao last time, were still vivid in their minds. If it weren't for the huge commotion this time, they wouldn't have taken a look no matter what. However, they risked their lives to take a look, but they couldn't see anything. They could only feel three powerful auras constantly colliding and eventually dissipating into nothingness, as if they had never existed. Something is covering that area. The one called Lord Tian was a young man who looked to be in his 20s. He had red lips, white teeth, and a jade-like face. He wore a blood-red brocade robe with a black jade pendant hanging from his waist. Behind him, 6 swords that were 3 feet long floated. Whether it was the brocade robe, the black jade, or the swords, they all emitted a strong spiritual light. They were clearly not ordinary objects. Waving his hand, Lord Tian waited for the guardian of the Elysium to leave. His face gradually turned cold as he murmured, "That aura just now belonged to that person." He actually took action personally. It seems that the Black Dragon is a greater threat to him than I thought. Speaking of this, he turned his gaze to the north, and a ferocious smile gradually appeared on his face. "Since the Black Jiao is so important, I can't let you do whatever you want." As soon as he finished speaking, Lord Tian put his hands together, and his fingers moved like butterflies, creating afterimages. He quickly formed a mysterious seal, and the 6 swords behind him immediately turned into 6 streams of light and flew north. "Disciples of the Jie sect, listen up!" Suddenly, a clear and cold voice rang out in some people's minds. On the other side, in the endless sea. "Tong Tian? Lin Yuan?" One of the 6 sages, the only one among the Sanqing sect who believed in education without discrimination? The corners of Lin Yuan's eyes twitched slightly. He couldn't possibly have to face one of the 6 sages after Hong Jun left, right? Damn, was the chance of igniting the divine fire so small? Could it be that as long as he held this thing in his hand, countless powerful enemies would come knocking on his door? For a moment, Lin Yuan's eyes were filled with disdain. That's not right. If it was really the prime of Tong Tian, why would he be here? During the investiture of the gods, the entire Jie school was destroyed. The prime of Tong Tian was captured by Hong Jun for Hongwan and locked up. Well, that was what was recorded in novels like The Investiture of the God. After that, the prime of Tong Tian rarely appeared in the myths and legends. Also, isn't the prime of Tong Tian one of the 6 saints? He can leave the chaos world? No, that wasn't right. The heaven martial world had a limit. It couldn't withstand the descent of a saint. If a saint forcefully descended into this world, they would either have to suppress their cultivation base to the limit or return to nothingness along with this world. However, the system obviously had no intention of continuing the conversation with Lin Yuan on this topic. Even the 2 words sky-piercing in the beginning were just a slip of the tongue. Lord Dragon King. Moao flew over. His gaze swept across the ruins behind Lin Yuan. A look of surprise flashed across his eyes. He asked, "We just sensed an extremely terrifying aura here. Did someone attack you?" Lin Yuan was silent for a moment. Then, he said calmly, "I went astray during my cultivation, causing my demonic energy to leak out. It's fine now. I'll just clean up the ruins." Moao was speechless. The surrounding gray-scaled flood dragon people and brave crab were speechless. "You went astray during your cultivation, causing your demonic energy to leak out and instantly destroy a willow stone palace? Can't you act like a desolate demon realm cultivator? Is this something you can do? What are you looking at? Put away your eyes. Otherwise, I'll poke all of you blind sooner or later." After taking a deep breath, Lin Yuan suddenly opened his mouth and roared. As soon as he finished speaking, the invisible feeling of being spied on instantly vanished. After all, after the incident with the white coat, very few people dared to continue spying on Lin Yuan. This was especially so after Lin Yuan threatened them. After all, the Black Jiao had been famous for a long time. Everyone knew that this Black Jiao had an unruly personality. If anyone insisted on going against him, they would be done for by the Black Jiao's crazy revenge. Countless experts withdrew their spying gazes. However, they still gathered together and whispered to each other. Lin Yuan's rhetoric is, in fact, the benevolent see benevolence, and the wise see wisdom. Those with weaker cultivations might have believed him. After all, Lin Yuan couldn't be judged by common sense since his appearance. He could even exchange a few blows with an ancestral demon. Although they didn't dare say that he could win, it wouldn't be that easy for an ancestral demon to kill him. The young ancestral dragon from the Four Seas Dragon Tribe was a bloody example. Although the Four Seas Dragon Tribe had protected the Black Jiao, everyone knew that even if no one protected the Black Jiao, it was still unknown who would win. However, those with profound cultivations definitely wouldn't believe such words. This was because they could clearly sense that although there were 3 auras fighting, there were actually 4 auras in the void. The aura that was so weak that it was almost undetectable belonged to Lin Yuan. Although they couldn't see clearly, they could vaguely guess that an extremely terrifying existence was preparing to kill Lin Yuan. At the same time, the other 2 terrifying existences had protected Lin Yuan. The existence that made the first move had retreated when it saw that the situation wasn't good. As for how terrifying the 3 who made the move were, whether it was the transcendent realm or the ancestral demon realm, in the eyes of such existences, they were just ants that could be easily crushed. At this moment, the experts of various forces once again felt the terrifying background of Lin Yuan. Especially the experts of the Four Seas Dragon Tribe and the Sea Monster Guild, who had previously joined forces to scheme against Lin Yuan, they were even more frightened at this moment. Even if they were already cautious in their actions, the trade city was Lin Yuan's painstaking effort after all. Once they took it away, even if they didn't harm the Black Jiao's life, it was hard to guarantee that the Black Jiao wouldn't summon the mysterious expert behind him to attack them. But the problem was, things had already reached this point. It was too late to stop now. Just when the experts of both sides were scared out of their wits, a travel-worn dragon bloodline beast suddenly broke into the West Sea Dragon Palace and brought an extremely terrifying news to the West Sea Dragon King. 6 hours ago, the outer sea beasts had begun to attack the Great Wall of Willowshire. The messenger who came back to deliver the news hurriedly used the teleportation array with the warrant of the Four Seas Dragon Palace to send the news back in time. Otherwise, it would be a few months later when the Four Seas Dragon Tribe received the news of the attack on the Great Wall of Willowshire. This matter was even beyond Lin Yuan's expectations, because he never thought that the news of the attack on the Great Wall of Willowshire would reach the ears of the Four Seas Dragon Tribe so quickly. Chapter 980. The West Sea Dragon King had his hands behind his back as he paced back and forth in the Crystal Palace. His eyes were so gloomy that they were about to drip water. To be able to stand out from countless powerful Dragon King demonic beasts and become this generation's Dragon King, the 4 great Dragon Kings were not ordinary people. Therefore, when the news from the Willowstone Great Wall came back, the West Sea Dragon King quickly realized that this was Lin Yuan's doing. Although he did not know the details, he could roughly guess that the Black Jiao had seen through their plan of boiling the frog in warm water, and then played a trick of leading the wolf into the house, leading the demonic beasts into this game. The Black Jiao is definitely not doing this just to take revenge on us. What he wants is time, and there must be, what does he want? The West Sea Dragon King's eyes narrowed into a line. His brain was spinning crazily, but no matter how hard he racked his brain, he could not figure out what benefits Lin Yuan wanted. Or rather, after the demonic beasts from the outer sea entered the game, what benefits could the Black Jiao obtain? He believed that the Black Jiao had a temper, otherwise, he would not have flipped the table with the Four Seas Dragon Clan. But a brute would not be able to reach this step today. The demonic beasts from the outer sea entering the game was obviously a variable brought about by the Black Jiao's careful planning, and not because of a moment of anger and unreasonable revenge. Pass down the order, for the time being, do not move. Let's see how the Sea Demon Guild will deal with it. The West Sea Dragon King could not figure out Lin Yuan's purpose, and waved his hand in annoyance. The Four Seas Dragon Clan represented the current orthodox overlords of the Endless Sea, and the Sea Demon Guild represented the Sea Demon clans that lived in the Endless Sea. The relationship between the two was similar to the relationship between the royal family and the aristocratic family. Both sides had no choice but to work together most of the time. After all, the rise of the ancient clans, the greed of the demonic beasts from the outer sea. These things were not something that a single side could bear. Even if they could withstand it once or twice, their foundation would be damaged in the continuous war, and they would be replaced by other clans in the end. But this time, the scene of Black Jiao's massacre outside the Willowstone Fortress was still fresh in their minds. The three terrifying auras that had erupted from the Willowstone Sea region and shocked the entire Sky Martial continent had just disappeared. At this time, who would dare to provoke Black Jiao? Yes. The adult dragon who sent the message bowed his head silently. It didn't understand the West Sea Dragon King's decision, nor did it understand why he didn't send reinforcements to support the Great Wall of Willow. Instead, he hoped that the Siren Guild would make the first move. After all, the Four Seas Dragon Clan was the mortal enemy of the Outer Sea monsters. Once the Outer Sea monsters entered the deep sea, they would never let go of the opportunity to slaughter the dragon bloodline monsters. But what could it do? It was just a small fry. It could either listen to orders or die. There was no third option. On the other hand, the Siren Guild also received the news immediately. After all, the Siren Guild's branches were spread all over the deep sea region. Moreover, their foundation was not much worse than the Four Seas Dragon Clan. Although they didn't have the ability to activate the teleportation formation in an emergency like the Four Seas Dragon Clan, they were still able to transmit the news quickly with the reputation of the various big clans and sufficient resources. They were only a little bit slower than the West Sea Dragon Palace. What is the attitude of the Four Seas Dragon Palace? A giant sea turtle that stood up like a human turned its head to look at the guild member who came to report the news. Its face was somewhat similar to a human's, but its dark green skin did not show any emotions. The guild member thought for a moment and said, "Although I rushed back to the headquarters as soon as possible, I'm certainly not as efficient as the Four Seas Dragon Clan. Before you received the news about the attack of the Outer Sea monsters, the Four Seas Dragon Clan must have already known about it. However, so far, the Four Seas Dragon Clan doesn't seem to have given any orders to mobilize their troop. It seems they are planning to bide their time." The giant sea turtle was silent for a moment. Then, it sneered and shook its head. It said, "The Four Seas Dragon Clan is indeed getting worse with each generation. Black Jiao might have caused such a big commotion before just to intimidate them. They were indeed intimidated. A major event like the attack of the Outer Sea monsters does not allow for the slightest hesitation or negligence. Once they kill their way into the deep sea region, none of the monsters with the Dragon Clan's bloodline will be able to survive. At this time, they still chose to bide their time and wait for our Siren Guild to take the lead." The guild member hesitated for a moment. Then, he said, "Then, should we also bide our time? After all, the Great Wall of Willows is not that easy to attack. Even if we don't send reinforcements, the Outer Sea monsters might not be able to break in. Moreover, even if they break in, they—" At this point, the guild member's voice abruptly stopped. There was indeed a blood feud between the Outer Sea demon beasts and the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas. However, after so many years, the ancestors of both sides had basically died. Now, the target of the Outer Sea demon beasts' hatred was no longer the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas. Almost all demon beasts with dragon bloodline were on their hunting list. And now, in the deep sea region, how many monsters did not have the Dragon Clan's bloodline? The Four Seas Dragon Clan can bide their time because the forces of the various sea demon clans are growing day by day. The respect for the Four Seas Dragon Clan has long been lost. Therefore, as long as the outer sea monsters can't attack the Four Seas Dragon Palace. No, even if the Four Seas Dragon Palace falls, as long as the Dragon Temple exists in the Endless Sea, the Four Seas Dragon Clan can continue to maintain the strategy of biding their time. But can we? The sea areas near the Great Wall of Willows are almost all important strategic points for us. If we lose those sea areas, our connection with the land will be directly cut off. In addition, a large number of our monsters will die. If we turn around and face the Four Seas Dragon Clan that is almost at their peak, do you think they will make the same mistake that their ancestors made when they underestimated the enemy and let us grow into a big problem? The sea turtle's face was gloomy, and he whispered, "The Four Seas Dragon Clan wants to borrow a knife to kill the monsters." The guild member's face was also gloomy. Now, the structure of the Endless Sea was divided into the Outer Sea Monsters and the Dragon Clan. However, the Dragon Clan was divided into various Dragon Clan clans and the orthodox Four Seas Dragon Clan. Among them, the most awkward ones were monsters like them. The Dragon Clan's blood flowed in their bodies, but they were not recognized by the Four Seas Dragon Clan. However, in the eyes of the Outer Sea Monsters, the Dragon Clan's blood in their bodies was a great sin. Therefore, they could only rely on the Four Seas Dragon Clan. Therefore, the Great Wall of Willows must not be lost. President, I understand. I will go and arrange. The guild member swallowed a mouthful of saliva and said nervously. However, before he could finish his words, the sea turtle raised its claw and interrupted him. It immediately continued, "We will not move. The Great Wall of Willows is not so easy to capture. We and the Four Seas Dragon Clan know this. If they don't move, we won't move either." Taking a step back, even if the Great Wall of Willows falls, the Four Seas Dragon Clan will not stay out of it. This time, we may really have a chance to replace them. Chapter 981. The entire strategy of the Outer Sea Monster Beasts was overturned. However, there were no objections among the allied army of monsters. It was because the Black Jiao's plan was more perfect. Or rather, the probability of success was higher. Therefore, batch after batch of Outer Sea Monster Beasts began to prepare their troops outside of the Great Wall of Willow City. They were not in a hurry to attack the city. Instead, they slowly gathered all kinds of resources from the rear. They even built siege weapons on the spot. In fact, they were doing very well. However, they did not even launch a single probing attack. After the battle, at a place where the defenders of the Great Wall of Willow City could not see, a large number of Outer Sea Monster Beasts arrived at the City of Trade through a temporary teleportation formation. They easily annihilated the sunken reefs surrounding the City of Trade and the surrounding sea monster beasts. Then, they split up into smaller groups and rushed towards the predetermined battle location. As for Lin Yuan, he had already built a high platform to watch the show. He was smiling as he watched the preparations for the show. In terms of military strategy, any military officer with at least 3 years of military experience would be able to easily defeat Lin Yuan. That was because Lin Yuan's knowledge came from all kinds of literature and movies. After all, he lived in Qingping era in his previous life. Therefore, he could only imitate what he saw. It was very difficult for him to deal with unexpected situations and come up with new tactics. However, if one were to look at the overall situation, even if Lei Qiuxing, Yan Xingqi and Zhao Xiang were at their peak, they would not be able to defeat him. On the battlefield, even the slightest movement could change the situation. Once Lin Yuan consumed his demonic energy and Jia's flame power, he could instantly control the entire battlefield or even a larger area. No troop's movement could escape his eyes. True and false military strategies were meaningless before his eyes that could see through everything. In addition, Lin Yuan had also consumed Jia's flame power to construct a temporary communication network. It was divided into an overall network and a regional network. As long as one's consciousness was connected to this network, Even if they were very far away, they could directly transmit information through their thoughts. It was very convenient whether it was the dispatch of a large army or the command of a small army that was going to carry out a big plan. During the battle, he could even switch from the internet to the local network. Other than the general, other members could only listen to the general's orders. The combination of these two abilities instantly created an invincible war god. If one were to disregard the factor of cultivation, a person with these two abilities could easily become invincible in any low-level martial arts world in the era of cold weapons. Even if the opponent had constructed a huge net that would kill him, as long as he didn't set it up in an instant and pull it back in an instant, the connection points of the net would be destroyed and he would be defeated. Because in front of such an ability, you couldn't hide anything. The more tricks you had, the faster you would be defeated. A1, A3, and A5 are already in position. Look for the designated base on the spot. After everything is settled, search for the gathering points of dragon blood demon beasts or the teams transporting supplies in units of 100 kilometers. Kill anyone who finds anything. B2, B7, B11, and B1-13, be prepared. Once the first 3 scouting squads are engaged in a battle, support them immediately and ensure the victory of the scouting squads. Also, more importantly, do not let anyone leave alive. Also C9, do not go any further. There is an army of dragon blood demon beasts 15 kilometers ahead of where you are right now. Both in terms of quantity and capability, they are more powerful than you. If you are engaged in a battle, your odds of winning are no more than 30%. Therefore, abandon your original route and hide here. Wait for my next instruction. Lin Yuan's voice was echoing in the communication network non-stop as he commanded the demon beasts from the outer sea in an orderly manner. It was a command plan that the leaders of the demon beasts from the outer sea had acquiesced to. Just like how the dragons of the 4 seas and the guild of sea demons were scheming against each other, few of them could resist the temptation once the command of the battle fell into their hands. After all, they only needed to move their mouths, and the followers of their opponents would be killed. After the battle was over, they could easily swallow the territories of their opponents and all the benefits that they had gained in the battle. Who could resist that? The warring state's kingdom had joined forces to attack the Qin state 5 times. 2 of them won, 2 of them lost, and 1 of them was resolved without a battle. Even if the overall situation was taken into account, the Allied forces were far more powerful than the Qin state. But in the end, they were defeated because of the lack of unity. Every country had their own plans, and they were defeated faster and more ruthlessly than when they faced the Qin state alone. However, as an existence in the age of information explosion, Lin Yuan would naturally avoid such a mistake. Therefore, he took the initiative to ask for the command. With the Black Jiao's invincible prestige and the strong temptation brought by the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce, the demon beasts from the outer sea did not resist too much. However, even if the demon beast army was an army, there were still many drawbacks. For example, in the human army, there was usually a detailed division of troop types, the number of troops, and so on. But the demon beasts did not have these. The combat units of the demon beasts were usually calculated by the group. After all, the demon beasts were invincible in the field under the same realm. When they encountered an opponent, they just had to rush forward. If they won, they won. If they lost, there was nothing to say. However, there were too many existences that humans could not defeat individually. They had to consider the corresponding cooperation to maximize the combat power, so the system had to be perfected. It was just that for Lin Yuan, who was used to the commander of the human army system, commanding the demon beasts to fight was really too torturous. Although the outcome of this war was already destined, Lin Yuan would not have any psychological burden for the death of these demon beasts. But after all, he was also the one who benefited from it. If he could inflict heavy losses on the Dragon Clan and the Sea Demon Guild, why not? Therefore, Lin Yuan could only make a simple formation for the Demon Beast army. With every 1,000 demon beasts as a unit, the number of each demon beast would be determined according to the time of dispatch. Different letters at the beginning meant that they would perform different tasks after arriving at the predetermined location. For example, the letter A was the enemy search team, and the letter B was the support team. As for the cooperation between the troop types, if there was time, he could consider it. However, the demon beasts in the outer sea had different racial talent. Lin Yuan did not have an ancient human diet book, like the classic of mountains and seas, to distinguish these demon beasts. It was also impossible for him to open the Eye of God to check their attributes one by one. He could only ask roughly and directly send them out. As for whether these demon beasts were compatible with each other, only God knew. Under the observation of the Eye of God, the formations named by Lin Yuan all moved in an orderly manner. According to the information given by Lin Yuan, they easily found the nearby dragon bloodline demon beasts or bypassed the strong enemies that they could not defeat. Chapter 982. One after another, the demonic beasts went to the designated mission location. Lin Yuan's blue-white eyes flashed with a cold light. Jiao Yi, who was standing beside Lin Yuan, stared at the dynamic holographic map formed by the power of incense in front of him and sighed in amazement. When he was fighting with Lin Yuan before, he had already realized what kind of damage Lin Yuan's series of combination punches would bring to the dragon bloodline demonic beast. But at that time, it was still the most basic battle. Both sides had their own advantages and disadvantages, and they were barely in a state of equality. But when he looked at the actual war, Lin Yuan undoubtedly became more and more terrifying. Nothing could escape his eyes. The area where the dragon bloodline demonic beasts were stationed in advance was easily bypassed. The demonic beasts shuttled through various sea regions, and the Great Wall of Willowshire slowly moved, transporting various materials to fill the warehouse of the Great Wall of Willowshire. Everything seemed so orderly, but the dragon bloodline demonic beasts probably didn't know that their every move was under Lin Yuan's observation. The whole battlefield was like a game of chess in Lin Yuan's eyes. However, this kind of game was obviously not so good for the commander of the other side. 5 days. In just 5 days, the most important part of the Great Wall of Willowshire's plan to resist the outer sea demonic beasts was easily destroyed. Those sea regions that could provide continuous support to the Great Wall of Willowshire were more or less attacked to varying degrees. Some of the stronger sea regions were able to withstand a few rounds of attacks, while some of the weaker sea regions were destroyed in one fell swoop. But even if the sea regions were not destroyed, they sent out signals for help again and again. They didn't dare to send any troops to transport supplies to the Great Wall of Willowshire. They had already fought with the outer sea demonic beasts, and they clearly knew that in the case of the same number of demonic beasts, they couldn't win at all, because they were only demonic beasts, and the other side was an army of demonic beasts. Lin Yuan's backstab had almost cut off all of the Great Wall of Willowshire from receiving outside resources. After all, a place like the Great Wall of Willowshire was not a place that could produce all kinds of resources. It was mainly a place of danger and desolation. In other words, although there were a lot of troops stationed here, the people in power here had to rely on the rear to survive. There was absolutely no possibility of rebellion. Lin Yuan had taken advantage of this point to trap the defenders of the Great Wall of Willowstone. Unless the dragon race of the Four Seas and the Siren Guild took action. Commander, those outer sea demonic beasts that are attacking our rear and harassing our supply lines and the sea are truly abominable. If this goes on, our Great Wall of Willowstone will be in danger. Commander, please give the order quickly and send a troop to the rear to kill those reckless outer sea demonic beasts. A red crab race demon king stood up like a human. blood chi burst out from his body like a long dragon. On the other hand, the demonic beast that was called Commander was a huge turtle with a metallic luster. Its shell was covered in moss, and its skin was covered in spikes. Only its head was no different from a pure-blooded dragon. I hate that I agree with your decision to attack. The big turtle glanced at the red crab and said coldly, "But first, how many demonic beasts are you going to bring out? So far, our scouts have not figured out how many outer sea demonic beasts there are behind us. If you bring out too few demonic beasts, not only will it be ineffective, it will also lead to the destruction of the entire army. When that happens, they will be even more rampant." The big turtle paused. Its pair of orange vertical pupils shook slightly. It continued, "But if you bring too many demonic beasts, over the past 5 days, the outer sea demonic beasts had been preparing their troops outside the Great Wall of Willowstone. If this were any other time, the defenders of the Great Wall of Willowstone would naturally be happy to do so. After all, with so many demonic beasts gathered together, the amount of food consumed every day was incomparably terrifying. No matter how well prepared the outer sea demonic beasts were, they would still be dragged to death. When that time came, they would have no choice but to retreat. On the other hand, there would not even be any casualties on the Great Wall of Willowstone. But the problem was, this was not a normal situation. The outer sea demonic beasts still had their own supply lines. Even if they were not well prepared, it would not be a problem for them to last for 1 or 2 years. But the Great Wall of Willowstone's reserves had been estimated. At most, it would be empty in another 2 months. No matter how frugal they were, it would be difficult to extend this time. Even worse was that the outer sea demonic beasts had burned, killed, and looted. Most of the sea regions had been destroyed. The remaining sea regions were the forts that the decision-makers had built in the belief that the Great Wall of Willowstone might not be safe. Their purpose was to delay the outer sea demonic beasts for a period of time after the Great Wall of Willowstone was destroyed. They would not allow the outer sea demonic beasts to directly attack the most prosperous sea regions. At the same time, as a precaution, to prevent the outer sea demonic beasts from using transmission arrays to cross over to the forts behind, none of the sea regions near the Great Wall of Willowstone had been set up with transmission arrays. The closest transmission array to the Great Wall of Willowstone required a Demon King to travel for a full 3 days and 3 nights. Currently, the rear of the Great Wall of Willowstone was in ruins. Unless it was an ancestral demon, it was impossible to cross over to the blockade of the outer sea demonic beasts. In order to deliver the message, it had already lost nearly 7 of its demon kings. If it sent any more demon kings out, it would be a huge loss. As for the direct descendants of the Four Seas Dragon clan, they were not people that these mixed-blood demonic beasts could order around. The current situation was so thorny. To clear out the outer sea demonic beasts at the rear, if it sent too few demonic beasts, it would be easy for them to be eaten by the outer sea demonic beasts. But if it sent too many, the outer sea demonic beasts outside would immediately attack. But if it did not clear out the outer sea demonic beasts? Just wait to starve to death. As for how the outer sea demonic beasts knew about the situation at the Great Wall of Willowstone, it was as if there was a pair of invisible eyes watching their every move from the top. No matter how they moved, they could not hide from the eyes of the outer sea demonic beast. The 7 demon kings had taken 7 different routes, but they had all died at the same time. The shattered life tokens in its hand were like a slap to its face. The only thing we can do now is to defend and wait for reinforcements. Big Turtle sighed and said in a deep voice, "We have already fallen into their trap. We can't move at all. Unless the army at the rear starts to move towards us, otherwise, wait a little longer. They already know about the outer sea demonic beast's attack. It is impossible for them to not react." Red Crab clenched its pincers and cursed, "They are really King retarded. The outer sea demonic beasts have already attacked us, but they are still fighting among themselves. Until now, we have not even received any news of reinforcements. How long do we have to wait? F***CK. Chapter 983. There's actually no internal strife. Interesting. A cold glint flashed in Lin Yuan's eyes. The commander of the Great Wall of Willowstone must have a steady character because this line of defense was very important. If it weren't for the existence of the Great Wall, the number of dragon bloodline demon beasts that fought to the death with the Outer Sea demon beasts every year was almost uncountable. Therefore, if he wasn't a steady character, he would never have been placed in this position to guard the Great Wall of Willowstone. No one would make such a low-level mistake. Just like Dong Zhuo in the Three Kingdoms period, if the ones guarding Sisui and Hulao were not brave generals like Hua Xiong and Lu Bu, who had a strong desire to attack, but were instead generals like Su Rong and Gao Shun, even if the 18 warring states' army joined forces to attack the Great Qin Empire, which was protected by the impregnable pass, they would still be defeated like the Six Kingdoms in the warring states period. However, that big turtle didn't seem to be simple either. In such a desperate situation, not only did it manage to stay calm, even the generals around it only suggested to attack and didn't get into an extremely unpleasant situation with it. Interesting. However, you can suppress the allied forces of the Sea Demon Guild, but what about the troops of the Four Seas Dragon Clan? The corners of Lin Yuan's mouth cracked open, revealing a ferocious smile. About 15 minutes later, a demon beast that looked like an electric eel came to the Great Wall of Willowstone and said in a deep voice, "Commander, I've found out that there's only one group of Outer Sea demon beasts that have entered the deep sea recently. It's the notorious pirate Sunken Reef group in the Outer Sea. It's said that they were ordered by a big shot of the Four Seas Dragon Clan to attack the Willowstone Sea and besiege the Black Jiao. They also use the line of defense of the Four Seas Dragon Clan. Except for them, there's no record of a large number of Outer Sea demon beasts entering the deep sea recently." Just as Lin Yuan had expected, the Outer Sea demon beasts that suddenly appeared behind them and cut off their food supply undoubtedly made them gnash their teeth in hatred. Furthermore, the Great Willowstone Wall was the first line of defense that separated the deep sea from the outer sea. No matter what method they used, it was impossible for them to pass through it directly. Just like how Lin Yuan had entered the deep sea before, they had also detected him. However, with the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas suppressing them, they did not attack Lin Yuan. Otherwise, the endless sea that was full of demon beasts would not be so peaceful. Especially at the border between the deep sea and the outer sea, the various clans of the deep sea had stationed a large number of troops. If it were not for the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas secretly escorting them, how could they not encounter a single demon beast? Good, good. Red Crab opened his eyes wide and said, "These pure-blooded dragons really treat the Great Wall of Willowstone as their private property. They let whoever they want through without even saying a word to us. King Horse. This time, they let in a group of Outer Sea demon beasts, which caused our current predicament, and they actually have the face to ask us to find a way to solve the transportation problem every day." Seeing that the demon beasts around all had angry looks on their faces, Big Turtle's heart suddenly sank. In the next moment, endless demon chi swept out and almost instantly turned the quasi-demon King Realm Electric Eel in front of him into a pile of minced meat. The corners of Big Turtle's eyes twitched a few times, then it said in a loud voice, "Damn it, it is a spy of the enemy. If that is the case, it should have paid attention to the overall situation and reported it to me in private. How could it say that in public? Isn't it disturbing the morale of my army? It should be killed." The surrounding demon beasts with blood-red eyes paused as their commander made a move. There was a hint of resentment in their eyes. Was that electric eel demon beast really a spy? I'm afraid not. They were all existences that were stationed on the Great Wall of Willowstone all year round. They naturally understood their commander's temperament. suddenly learning that the outer sea demon beasts were actually released into the deep sea by the dragon clan of the Four Seas, and that the dragon clan of the Four Seas had been causing a ruckus during this period of time. Spreading this news would definitely make these demon beasts extremely anxious. But what if they only told their commander? Then, it would still die. It was just that this news would be deliberately covered up by their commander. In the end, their commander was still seeking stability. Right now, it was said that the number of demon beasts was insufficient, but the increasingly empty granary was clearly like a mountain pressing down on their hearts. However, there were powerful enemies on the outside and the outer sea demon beasts ambushing the supply troops behind them. They could only hole up in the great wall of willow stone to struggle at death's door. Their hearts had long been ignited with a nameless fire. But at this time, a conflict with the dragon clan of the Four Seas broke out? A cold light flashed in Red Crab's eyes. He said in a low voice, "Commander, this spy has already spread the news. If there is no explanation for this matter, I'm afraid the brothers below won't accept it." The commander's eyes narrowed slightly. He said in a cold voice, "Then what do you mean? You want me to confront the dragon clan of the Four Seas? Can't you see that this is the enemy trying to disturb our morale?" Even if the sunken reef was let in by the dragon clan of the Four Seas, it should be in the Willowstone region right now. Even if it was really done by them, how many demon beasts could enter the sunken reef? You. At this point, the commander's heart suddenly sank. A sharp light flashed in his eyes. What this subordinate means is, why don't we beat them at their own game? Red Crab cupped his pincers. He said in a cold voice, "Even if it is a spy, it can't be that the dragon clan of the Four Seas wants to harm themselves, right? Therefore, the matter here definitely hasn't spread. What I mean is, why don't we use this matter to counterattack? In any case, the dragon clan of the Four Seas is causing a ruckus every day. They want us to deal with those outer sea demon beasts ambushing the supply troop. However, the matter of the sunken reef is most likely true. Perhaps we can let the dragon clan of the Four Seas go to the rear and clean up those damned outer sea demon beasts?" The dragon clan of the Four Seas go to the rear? A sharp light flashed in the commander's eyes. Although each demon beast clan was responsible for their own sections of the city wall, there was no doubt that the dragon clan of the Four Seas built the Willowstone city wall to defend against the outer sea demon beasts. However, they wouldn't leave the important strategic areas to their own clansmen. Therefore, over the years, the ones fighting against the outer sea demon beasts were basically the members of the various sea demon beast clans. The dragon clan of the Four Seas, at most, they would provide support from the side. If the dragon clan of the Four Seas left the defensive line, it didn't seem to have much of an impact. Gulp. Red Crab swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He spoke again. "Furthermore, we are only asking them to give us an explanation. After all, they were the ones who let the sunken reef in. They must have counted the number of people. To them, this task isn't difficult. Firstly, it can solve the problem of the supply troop. Secondly, the outer sea demon beasts are currently preparing their troop. We don't know when they will attack. If they accept the order to clean up the rear, they can avoid a direct confrontation with the main force of the outer sea demon beasts. They have no reason to refuse. Then let's do it." The commander let out a long breath. Finally, he nodded and approved of the decision to attack. Chapter 984. Heh! Seeing Big Turtle nod, Lin Yuan could not help but sneer again. The Sea Monster Guild and the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas, these two behemoths, had always been scheming against each other. This would not change no matter where they were. After all, the City of Trade had not opened yet. Those who knew that Lin Yuan had the teleportation formation were basically monster kings and ancestral monster realm big shot. They were different from this group of people who were always stationed at the Great Wall of Willowshire. At this moment, these big shots were still safely at the rear, silently competing to see who would be the first to lend a hand. Therefore, the defenders of the Great Wall of Willowshire did not immediately think of the teleportation formation. It was just that this commander had a steady temperament. He would not easily split his troops to attack the outer sea monsters that were intercepting the supply convoy. After all, to be able to destroy so many seas, intercept so many supply convoys at the same time, and even have the strength to spare to kill 7 monster kings who were sent out to deliver the message, if it were not for Lin Yuan's command, even if the outer sea monsters were far stronger than the so-called sunken reef pirates, they would not have been able to do this. Big Turtle did not know that there was an invisible commander like Lin Yuan, and did not know about the existence of the teleportation formation. The dragon clan of the 4 seas would not tell them how many sunken reef monsters were released into the deep sea. Therefore, they instinctively guessed that there were actually a lot of outer sea monsters behind them. If the main force of the Great Wall of Willowshire came out, Lin Yuan would have to temporarily avoid them. However, if it was the troops of the dragon clan of the 4 seas on the Great Wall of Willowshire, even if they came out in full force, what was there to be afraid of? Turning his gaze slightly, Lin Yuan's gaze fell on a sea area that had just been demolished into ruins. He said in a deep voice, "The troops near the sea area should immediately evacuate and no longer continue to fight the enemy. Troops A and B should scatter and hide. Do not attack unless it is absolutely necessary. Troops C should continue to perform their duties and execute according to the plan. Do not completely destroy the materials in those sea areas. When encountering troops from the Great Wall of Willowshire, they should immediately evacuate and lead them deeper into the sea. Wait for the time to close the net. In addition, Troops D should quickly get into position to ensure that no defeated troops will escape into the Great Wall of Willowshire after the battle begins." There was no need to observe the negotiations between the dragon race of the 4 seas and the commander-in-chief. Just like what the Red Crab said, without knowing that Lin Yuan has a transmission array, the only people who can attack the rear of the sea monsters can only be the pirates of the sunken reef. No one knows the strength of the sunken reef better than the 4 seas dragon clan who let the sunken reef into the deep sea area. Then, look at the main force of the outer sea demonic beasts outside the Great Wall of Willowshire. Who was he supposed to beat up? How could he not know? Not only would the dragons of the 4 seas not refuse this mission, they would even happily accept it and leave in a mighty manner. However, they would encounter all sorts of ruins and wreckage along the way, and because they had yet to solve the problem of the sunken reefs behind them, their supplies were still insufficient. They were more than happy to not have to return to the Great Wall of Willows and face the incomparably ferocious outer sea monsters. After walking to a certain distance, they would gradually lose contact with the Great Wall of Willowshire. At that time, they would coincidentally find the sea areas with resources, and coincidentally encounter the outer sea monsters that were still in the Sea of Destruction and had not retreated in time. At that time, they would inevitably gather resources and chase after them. As more and more resources were collected, the troops would become more and more bloated, and the battle line would also become longer and longer. At that time, if they were to attack head-on, then the entire army of the 4 seas dragon clan would collapse and flee in the direction of the Great Wall of Willows, because from the very beginning, Lin Yuan had been deliberately guiding them. There was a saying in his previous life, "The fear of humans often comes from the unknown." Actually, it was just right to use it here. When the dragons of the 4 seas dragon clan always thought that they were only going to face pirates of the sunken reef scale, and all the enemies they encountered along the way fled at the mere sight of them, they would certainly do this. However, once they hit a wall, they would quickly realize that they had been deceived, and the so-called morale of the army would collapse in an instant. In this deliberately stretched battle line, all the outer sea monsters would begin to chase after and eliminate them. If they could get back to the Great Wall of Willows, then there would be less than 1/10 of them left. If these monsters also died, and were killed under the eyes of the defenders of the Great Wall of Willows, it would also be a blow to their morale. Taking a step back, even if they did not escape to the vicinity of the Great Wall of Willows, so what? The problem of supplies still had not been solved. Instead, the entire army of the Four Seas Dragon Clan had retreated, and the outer sea monsters had to send out a troop to guard the gap created by the retreat of the Four Seas Dragon Clan. If these monsters did not return, when the war began, negative emotions such as resentment would inevitably appear, and their will to fight to the death would also be extinguished. The so-called Great Wall of Willows would no longer be so terrifying. From the very beginning, Lin Yuan did not think that a simple conspiracy would be able to achieve success. After all, the proper art of war required the right combination, and the unorthodox path also required the right combination of yin and yang. Since he had already used a conspiracy to restrict the defenders of the Great Wall of Willows, wouldn't it be better to supplement it with an overt scheme to make the relationship between the two sides even more tense? Then, another 3 days passed. Under the guidance of the troops that started with the letter C, the troops of the Four Seas Dragon Clan continued to penetrate deeper into the hinterland. Even if they managed to retrieve the supplies they collected along the way back to the Great Wall of Willows, they would still be able to buy about a month's time. If the reinforcements of the Four Seas Dragon Clan and the Sea Monster Guild had yet to arrive after this period of time, their defeat would naturally be settled. However, intelligent creatures had always been insatiable. Even if they managed to collect the supplies, the troops of the Four Seas Dragon Clan were very clear that if they continued forward, they would reach the true hinterland. Judging from the actions of these outer sea monsters along the way, if they left them alone, it would definitely be a disaster. Besides, they had already chased them all the way here. If they turned back to the Great Wall of Willows without doing anything, wouldn't it make them look like they were useless? Therefore, under Lin Yuan's arrangement, the troops belonging to the Four Seas Dragon Clan fiercely collided with the outer sea monsters that had gathered together. Even before the two sides clashed, the generals of the Four Seas Dragon Clan realized that they were definitely not facing those loosely disciplined Sunken Reef pirates, but a well-trained elite troop that had been in disguise all along. Therefore, the troops were defeated like a landslide. In other words, they did not dare to fight at all. They fled madly in the direction of the Great Wall of Willows, not even having the time to care about the supplies they had painstakingly collected along the way. They only cared about running for their lives and did not even have a decent counterattack. Chapter 985. Kill them all. Lin Yuan's cold voice sounded in the command channel. Troop A was in charge of engaging the enemy, Troop B was in charge of supporting the battlefield, and Troop C was in charge of cleaning up the deserters and the wreckage after the battle. Troop D, which had been conserving their strength throughout the entire plan and hadn't even experienced many battles, quickly bared their fangs under Lin Yuan's command and directly cut off the Four Seas Dragon Clan's path of return to the Great Willow Wall. A one-sided battle. A pursuit that could be called a massacre. Plus, the troops that were trapped in the Great Willow Wall, their resources were getting increasingly scarce, and they couldn't move. Moao, who had torn a dragon bloodline demon beast to shreds, wiped away the blood that had splattered around his eyes and turned to look in the direction of the City of Trade. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. What a scheme of ghosts and gods! If His Majesty also had such a genius to assist him, wouldn't the unification of the endless sea be just around the corner? Without the connection of the all-life scripture, Lin Yuan naturally couldn't hear Moao's thoughts. Even if he heard it, he wouldn't shamelessly agree to it. After all, this battle wasn't a scheme of ghosts and gods from the start. In the end, it was only because he was using cheats. He used the eye of God to survey the entire situation, and he used the power of Joss flames to communicate. This series of operations had almost turned all of the outer sea monster beasts that were participating in the battle at the rear into his followers. They were shocked by his command and foresight. Even if they were followers, they could still produce a little bit of joss flames a day. Therefore, not only did he not consume any joss flames, he actually obtained more joss flames. This was a huge profit. On the other side, in the camp of the Outer Sea Demon Beast Alliance, the human who was called a mutant touched his smooth chin and pointed at the wall of the Great Wall of Willowstone. Then, he began to communicate with the other leaders of the Outer Ocean's demon forces. Although Lin Yuan's plan was very impressive, everyone knew in their hearts that the Four Seas Dragon Clan and the Sea Demon Guild wouldn't really watch them invade the deep sea without doing anything. Especially now, those demon beasts from the outer ocean who were responsible for intercepting the supply wagons were about to charge into the most prosperous hinterland. It would be strange if they still didn't move. They had to completely eliminate the defenders of the Great Wall of Willow City before the reinforcements of the Dragon Tribe and the Siren Guild arrived. By then, they could rely on the pass to give these reinforcements a fatal blow. On the other hand, if they couldn't take down the Great Wall of Willow City before the reinforcements arrived, the coalition forces attacking the deep sea region would become a complete joke. Not only did the Black Jiao help you restrain the defenders of the Great Wall of Lushur, they were also waiting for you to come over and put the nail in the coffin. But now that you pulled a stunt and forgot to bring the hammer and nail, even if the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce came over, they might not be able to cooperate with you. As the leaders of these outer ocean forces reached a consensus, the sound of conches immediately rang out in the camp of the Allied army. A large number of outer ocean demon beasts, who had been recuperating, stood up and looked coldly at the walls of the Great Wall of Willows. Why now? Did something happen to Ao Zhe and the others? The commander's orange eyes flickered slightly as he looked at those outer ocean demon beasts who were getting closer and closer with a face full of disbelief. These guys had been bombing outside the Great Wall of Willows for half a month. They didn't attack earlier or later, but chose to attack now? Especially as the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas gradually moved further and further away, the information that could be sent in one day would now take at least 3 to 5 days to reach the Great Wall of Willows. Sometimes they didn't even bother to go through the process, as if they had completely disappeared. If it wasn't clear how cruel the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas were to traitors and derelicts, it would have thought that the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas had found a safe sea region and stayed there, silently waiting for the outcome of the battle here to be announced. Wait, I fell into a trap? A cold light flashed in the eyes of the big turtle as it murmured with a face full of disbelief. The current situation of the Great Wall of Willows was within the opponent's calculations. This was never beyond its expectations. However, the opponent used the name of Sinking the Reef to trick them into falling out with the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas. Then, they immediately set up a trap to kill the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas. Through some unknown means, they contacted the outer ocean demon beasts outside the Great Wall of Willows and made them attack before the reinforcements arrived. So that's how it is, hee hee, ha 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 ha. The big turtle softly murmured to itself, its face full of sadness and self-blame. Because only now did it realize that the opponent's plan revolved around it from the very beginning. If it wasn't for being overly cautious and sending troops to clear out the outer ocean demon beasts at the rear, even if the front line was tight, it might not be impossible to drive back the outer ocean demon beasts' attack by shedding more blood. If it wasn't for the faint grudge in its heart against the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas, it wouldn't have allowed the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas to leave the defensive line, resulting in the current situation. To be honest, the Dragon Tribe of the Four Seas leaving the defensive line at the Great Wall of Willows was actually a small matter. After all, it wasn't a particularly important area in the first place, so it couldn't be lost. With the current forces at hand, it was more than enough to deal with it. However, so far, the Great Wall of Willows hadn't received any supplies, and it was trying its best to save as much food as possible. Not to mention that the troops under its command had lost the ability to fight, it was inevitable that it would complain in its heart. And now, although its rationality was telling itself that the dragon tribe of the Four Seas troops were most likely wiped out, there seemed to be another voice in its heart that was shouting, those dragon tribe had clearly escaped to a safe place and didn't want to return to this oppressive great wall of willows. If even it was like this, then what would the demon beasts below think? The general had no battle intent, and the soldiers had no battle intent. This battle was bound to be lost. Taking a step back, even if it was lucky enough to survive, what could it do? After all, those dragon tribe of the Four Seas were sent out by it. Now that they were wiped out by the enemy, with the temperament of the dragon tribe of the Four Seas, the dragon tribe of the Four Seas would definitely not let this matter rest. After all, there were very few pure-blood dragon tribe members to begin with, let alone an organized dragon tribe army. Even if they were divided into the dragon palace of the Four Seas, it would still be a huge loss. If they investigated a little later, they would be able to find out that it was it that ordered the dragon tribe of the Four Seas to attack and eliminate the demon beasts in the outer seas. When that time came, the dragon tribe of the Four Seas would definitely make it pay with its life. On the other hand, on the side of the Sea Demon Guild, it was normal for them to be in a state of disunity. Although they wholeheartedly agreed with what it was doing, when faced with the anger of the dragon tribe of the Four Seas, they would still push it out without hesitation to quell the anger of the dragon tribe of the Four Seas. So in this battle, losing meant death. Winning? That was also death. When Lin Yuan's plan was revealed layer by layer, a layer of haze that couldn't be removed gradually shrouded the commander-in-chief's heart. Chapter 986. When a person or a demonic beast realized that they were already in a situation where death was inevitable, it was definitely the time when they started to go crazy. After guessing their own ending, the choice was actually very important. It could continue to carry out its duty and lead the demonic beasts under its command to repel the attacks of the demonic beasts from the outer sea and then calmly accept its death. It could also ignore it and allow the outer sea demonic beasts to break through this impregnable pass and bring everyone down with them. I admit that I took a gamble, but that's not important anymore. Anyway, the ending is already decided. It's just a matter of how difficult it is. Lin Yuan chuckled as he looked at the big turtle whose face was filled with despair. His gaze gradually became meaningful. He smiled and said, I heard that when an honest person is angry, those who usually bully him don't even have the right to kneel. If you weren't an honest person, why would you end up being placed on the Great Wall of Willowshire and forgotten by everyone? Then, let me see the anger of an honest person. At this moment it seemed to have sensed something. The big turtle suddenly turned its head and looked at the endless darkness behind it. It roared, You want me to surrender without a fight? Dream on. All soldiers, listen to my orders and guard the areas you are in charge of. Supervisors, listen to my orders. With me as the boundary, kill anyone who is half a step behind me without mercy. The big turtle's roar reverberated on this section of the city wall. It was brought to various sections of the city wall by the messengers and supervisors. You're quite something. What a pity. Below the city wall, Emota brandished his 2 urn hammers. He raised his head and glanced at the hysterical big turtle. The demonic energy around his body rippled, deflecting all the incoming arrows to one side. With a hideous grin, he stepped on the willow stone city wall and flew upwards. It was still the same saying. The general had no fighting spirit, and the soldiers had no fighting spirit. This battle had been dragged on until now. The defenders of the Great Wall of Willowshire would still be defeated without a doubt. Even if their general was unwilling to give up, it did not mean that the other demonic beasts would have the same attitude. After all, it was an indisputable fact that the demonic beasts in the outer sea hated the dragon bloodline demonic beast. However, the demonic beasts in the outer sea were not fools. They would also choose to accept the dragon bloodline demonic beasts that were willing to surrender. Just like the evil dragons who had escaped the supervision of the Four Seas in the early years, except for the majority of the evil dragons who formed the evil dragon camp, the rest of the demonic beasts lived in seclusion in the outer sea. During the Warring States period, Wu and Lord Baichi killed 400,000 Zhao soldiers in one battle, causing the Zhao people to think that surrendering to the Qin was a dead end. That was why there was such a tragic Han-Dan protection battle. But at the end of the day, the state of Zhao lost because they had no food. The reason why Baichi killed the surrendered soldiers of Zhao state was because they did not have enough food and fodder. If Qin state could afford to feed 400,000 Zhao soldiers, why would they kill so many young and strong men? The demon beasts in the outer seas, who didn't have such worries, naturally wouldn't make such a mistake. Otherwise, with so many dragon bloodline demon beasts living in seclusion in the outer seas, this kind of news couldn't have been released by the Four Seas Dragon Clan and Sea Monster Guild to dissuade their subordinates from fighting the demon beasts in the outer seas, right? So that's how it is. Lin Yuan's eyes flashed. The relationship between the outer sea monsters and the dragon clan of the Four Seas had always been a mystery. According to the history compiled by the Dragon Clan of the Four Seas, the so-called outer sea monsters were chased out by the four ancestral dragons of the Four Seas together with the deep sea clans. This was because the bloodlines of these monsters were weak. Even if they combined with the bloodlines of the Dragon Clan, they would only tarnish the bloodlines of the Dragon Clan. But the problem was that the Dragon King of the Four Seas was the leader of the scale insects in the untainted world. Even if they were extremely weak after the first tribulation of the Dragon Han era, they were still able to occupy the Four Seas and establish themselves as kings. At that time, although the Four Seas Dragon King was no longer powerful, it was still not something that ordinary powers in the untainted world could compare to. Such a colossus, even if they had fled to the Tianwu world as exiles, would still be domineering and unruly. After all, although the original aborigines of the Endless Sea were not weak, they definitely did not have the strength to contend with the Four Seas Dragon Clan. And Lin Yuan had already experienced the style of the Four Seas Dragon Clan. If the demon beasts in the outer seas were really weak, then it was not as simple as being driven out by the Four Seas Dragon Clan. In fact, from this point of view, the ancestors of the demon beasts that were driven out definitely had the strength to contend with the Four Seas Dragon Clan. In other words, they were driven out only because their comprehensive strength was not as strong as the Four Seas Dragon Clan. But if the Four Seas Dragon Clan wanted to destroy them, they would have to pay a great price. But the actions of the Four Seas Dragon Clan were not like the history they compiled. Not only did they let go of those rebels who were unwilling to submit, but they also specially spent a lot of money to build a series of defensive fortifications, such as the Great Willow Stone Wall, at the junction between the outer seas and the deep sea. Obviously, they were worried about the counterattack of the demon beasts that were driven out of the outer seas. The game between the aborigines of the Endless Sea and the Four Seas Dragon Clan had actually started countless years ago. Now, Lin Yuan was just an invisible push hand. The reason why the demon beasts in the outer seas cooperated with Lin Yuan to attack the deep sea was not because of the blood feud between the two clans. On the contrary, they had long been preparing for this kind of thing. Cooperating with Lin Yuan was, first, for the rich profits of the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce. Second, because Lin Yuan could directly help them eliminate the obstacle, the Great Willow Stone Wall, at the lowest cost. Phew! Letting out a long breath, Lin Yuan shook his head with a chuckle and murmured, "All living beings are chess pieces. The general trend opposes the general trend. It seems that my previous judgment may not be accurate. These demon beasts from the outer seas have definitely come prepared. It seems that this time, even if the ancestor demon experts of the Four Seas Dragon Clan and the Sea Monster Guild take action, they may not be able to easily suppress the demon beasts from the outer seas. Standing beside Lin Yuan, Cyrus pondered for a moment and suddenly said with a smile, "If things are like this, it will be more advantageous for us. If the battle goes on for a long time and the great willow stone wall is breached, the endless sea will no longer be divided into the inner and outer seas. The three colossal forces will be separated and the gap between them will inevitably increase. We will have a better space to develop." "I hope so." Lin Yuan sighed softly. Everyone knew the strategy of driving the wolf to devour the tiger. But who knew that if they tried to drive the wolf to devour the tiger, they might run the risk of being devoured by the tiger and the wolf before the plan could succeed? Since the demon beasts from the outer seas were taking advantage of the situation, why didn't they confront each other directly from the beginning? Who knew if they had any designs on the city of trade? Cyrus pondered for a moment and suddenly said, "Dragon King, the general trend has been set. Between the demon beasts from the outer seas and the dragon bloodline demon beasts, one will die and the other will be injured. Otherwise, this war will never end. What we should do now is to watch the show instead of trying to change the trend. With our current strength in the endless sea, even if we stand on the weaker side, we can't change anything." Chapter 987. The Willow Stone Great Wall was the first line of defense against the outer sea monster beasts. It was the barrier that the dragon bloodline monster beasts relied on the most. But in front of the outer sea monster beasts, it was like a piece of paper. In less than a month, the outer sea monster beasts had completely conquered the Willow Stone Great Wall. If it weren't for the sturdiness of the willow stones, the Willow Stone Great Wall would have been completely destroyed by the outer sea monster beasts. "Bastard, you should be killed." The West Sea Dragon King paced back and forth with his dragon claws behind his back. His vertical pupils flashed with a cold light. The bastard he was talking about was undoubtedly Lin Yuan, who was frowning at the moment. In fact, Lin Yuan's actions were difficult for the dragon tribe of the Four Seas to understand. After all, Lin Yuan was also a dragon blood demonic beast. Moreover, he was not one of the bastards in the Endless Sea. After all, although Lin Yuan was a flood dragon and not a real dragon, he was a pure-blooded flood dragon. According to the ancient records of the dragon tribe of the Four Seas, with this level of bloodline purity, if his cultivation was successful, he would definitely be able to pass the heavenly tribulation and turn into a real dragon. Moreover, he belonged to the noble true dragon species. The winged dragon that assisted the Yellow Emperor in unifying the world was only a true dragon species of this level. Just like the daughter of the Four Seas Dragon King, Ao Qian, strictly speaking, had the blood of a true dragon flowing in her body. She was also a superior species among the pure-blooded dragons. However, when facing Lin Yuan, the Black Jiao, she still felt that the power of Lin Yuan's bloodline was nobler and purer than her own. However, although he was a dragon blood demonic beast that had the potential to evolve into a true dragon, the Black Jiao did not care about the interests of the dragon tribe of the Four Seas at all. Instead, he set traps everywhere, as if he wanted to exterminate the dragon tribe of the Four Seas. At this moment, he even joined forces with the outer sea demonic beasts to attack the Great Wall of Willowstone, almost directly forcing the dragon tribe of the Four Seas into a desperate situation. Those were the outer sea demonic beast, the dragon blood demonic beast's blood enemy. Yes, the dragon race of the Four Seas wanted the city of trade and the northern frontier. It was true that they coveted Lin Yuan's current power. But now, the attitude of the Four Seas dragon race was different from before. Several ancestral dragons treated Black Jiao as an existence on the same level. They wanted Black Jiao's authority, but they were not stingy in promising the seventh seat of the Dragon God Temple, allowing Black Jiao to enjoy the honor of being a dragon god with his desolate demon cultivation. So what if the authority of the northern frontier was merged into the dragon race of the four seas? At that time, Black Jiao would naturally become the only true ruler of the four seas dragon clan. Not only would his power not be affected, but it would also improve. With the support of the dragon clan of the four seas and the endless sea as a treasure trove, the comprehensive strength of the entire northern frontier would skyrocket. At that time, even if Lin Yuan wanted to take on the three identities of Dragon God, Beast Master, and Emperor, it would only take a single thought. But unfortunately, the West Sea Dragon King's eyes flashed with a crazy cold light. He roared, "Pass down my king's order." All the tribes under the West Sea Dragon Palace immediately set off for the Great Wall of Willowshire. Gather the defeated troops along the way and prepare for the decisive battle. If you encounter any non-dronic beasts, kill them regardless of their background or origin. As soon as he finished speaking, the sound of a dragon's roar spread out. The demonic beasts of the dragon clan, who had already prepared their martial arts, roared in agreement. Soon after, they moved in unison toward the area where the Great Wall of Willowshire was located. Not long after the tribes under the dragon race of the four seas set off, the troops gathered by the Sea Demon Guild followed closely behind. No matter what kind of grievances there were between the dragon race of the four seas and the Sea Demon Guild, the outer sea demonic beasts must be dealt with first. Before, they did not move because they were worried that they would be the first to lose too much power in the war with the outer sea demonic beasts and be swallowed by the dragon race of the four seas. But now was not the time to worry so much. No one expected that the Great Wall of Willowshire would be taken down so easily. The following battle was not a defensive battle at all. Instead, it was a fierce battle between the outer sea demonic beasts and the dragon bloodline demonic beasts in the open sea. This time, not to mention the powerful aura that erupted from the City of Trade, unless the Black Jiao really shed all pretense of cordiality and called out some powerhouses that they could not resist to slaughter them, there was no way they could stop them. After the dragon bloodline demonic beasts' allied army was sent out, Lin Yuan said calmly in the command network, "Everyone, this king promised you that he would capture the Great Wall of Willowshire at the lowest cost. Now that he has fulfilled his promise, this king will not participate in the following battle. No matter how you win or lose, it has nothing to do with this king." As soon as his voice fell, Lin Yuan decisively cut off the power of incense that supplied the communication network and the teleportation formation. Because of Lin Yuan's decisiveness, the outer sea demonic beasts, who were still immersed in the joy of victory, looked at each other in bewilderment, hesitating to speak. It could not be helped. Wars between demonic beasts had always been cruel and bloody. For example, when the demonic beasts of the Hengduan mountain range attacked the cities of human beings, they would charge at the cities directly and climb up the city walls to fight the cultivators no matter how many casualties they had to pay. The battle would not be over until one of the parties was completely wiped out. After experiencing Lin Yuan as a commander who could foresee the enemy's moves, it was indeed difficult for them to accept such a primitive war. To put it simply, without Lin Yuan's help, it would be impossible for them to avoid the enemy's powerful army perfectly, nor would they be able to catch all the spies and scouts that were everywhere. They could only gather their main forces and fight the enemy head-on like the dragon bloodline demonic beasts did. By then, the outer sea demonic beasts, who were not very strong, would definitely be wiped out. It seems that the Black Jiao has guessed something. The strange man was half squatting at the bottom of the sea. A meaningful look flashed in his eyes. The water around him seemed to be alive and took the initiative to avoid the area around him. It did not wet his clothes or affect his movements, but it still provided oxygen to him. So what if he has guessed it? A demonic beast that looked like a crocodile spoke in a low, muffled voice. Now that the Great Wall of Willow City has been taken down, how many of our brothers have those dragon bloodline demonic beasts taken advantage of the terrain of the city? Now that they have lost their reliance, they will realize that they have become extremely weak. If they fight us head-on, they will only be torn apart by us easily. At this moment, another demonic beast with a shark head and black skin said, Poison Scale, don't forget that no matter how weak the dragons of the four seas are, they still have experts of the ancestral demon realm behind them. Putting aside the number of demonic beasts on both sides, in terms of quality, we are the ones who are at a disadvantage. Tundun, this king doesn't need you to remind him. Poison Scale, the crocodile demonic beast, turned his head to look at the shark demonic beast and sneered. Those ancestral demon realm experts all cherish their divine power. As long as we are not scared off, would they really dare to attack us at all costs? Chapter 988. Tundun snorted coldly and turned his head to the side, clearly too lazy to argue with Du Lin. The corners of Strange Man's mouth twitched slightly, and he said with a bitter smile, My lords, why are you so angry? Lord Tundun is speaking the truth. Our top fighting strength is far less than the dragon bloodline demon beast. If those demon ancestors really take action, we might really be pushed back. However, didn't Lord Du Lin say that he would contact the demon ancestors of the god worship sect to help us? Why? Hearing this, Du Lin's nostrils suddenly snorted and a terrifying power erupted. His breath alone pushed away the extremely dense seawater in the depths of the sea. He then said in a deep voice, Those guys are not reliable at all. Although they agreed to help, they are only helping us because of their ancestral relationship. Therefore, don't expect them to do too much. If the demon ancestors of the dragon bloodline demon beasts don't take action, then those from the god worship sect won't either. So you mean that they will only take action if the demon ancestors of the dragon bloodline demon beasts take action? Tundun sneered and said in a strange tone, Then can I understand that they don't want to help us at all? Even if the demon ancestors of the dragon bloodline demon beasts take action, if they feel that they can't beat them, they will choose not to help? Say what you will. Du Lin mimicked Tundun and turned his head to the side, but did not directly refute Tundun. The man let out a sigh. The outer sea demon beasts were divided into different territories. Tundun and Du Lin's territories were very close to each other. There were even rumors that the ancestor of these two demon beasts was the same great demon. Therefore, their territories were very close to each other, and they even had each other's weak point. These years, Tundun and Du Lin had been constantly fighting each other. It was just that their strength was similar and neither could do anything to the other. But now, Du Lin did not refute Tundun. In other words, the demon ancestors of the god worship sect might really not take action? Then, would they still have a chance of winning this war? Just like Lin Yuan's initial concerns, the so-called art of war and strategy could indeed have a certain effect in this world. The premise was that the overall strength of both sides was similar. Only then could they find other ways to make up for the odds of victory. But the current situation was, one side had ancestral demon realm experts backing them, while the other side didn't even know if their own ancestral demon realm experts would attack. If you think of my god-worshipping sect that way, then you are wrong. As a languid voice rang out, the surrounding seawater immediately flowed in reverse and gathered, forming a dragon-shaped creature made of seawater. However, compared to the true dragons of the Four Seas dragon race, this dragon-shaped creature was more like the Western dragons from Lin Yuan's previous world. It had no horns on its head, a lion's body, a lizard's head, and a pair of large bat wings on its back. However, when Lin Yuan differentiated between Eastern and Western dragons in his previous life, he always liked to say that Western dragons had wings while Eastern dragons didn't. In fact, this is a false statement, because one of the four great divine dragons, the winged dragon who assisted the Yellow Emperor in unifying the world and cooperated with Hanba to break the formation of bitter wind and bitter rain, was actually a true dragon with wings on its back. It was just that it didn't have a lizard's head, a lion's body, or bat wings. In fact, the image of a true dragon that people generally believed was just a patchwork image in some legends. No one knew what a true dragon looked like. After all, the dragon race didn't have reproductive isolation. The so-called 9 sons of the dragon were all different. Even the 9 sons of the ancestral dragon looked different, let alone the true dragon, that was a mixture of countless bloodlines. There was an interesting saying in the dragon race's inheritance. After the Yellow Emperor defeated Shenong and Qiyu, he summoned the leaders of all tribes and clans to the Pusan Alliance in Julu County, which was also known as the Fusion Talisman of Pusan in history. Since then, all the feudal lords respected Xian Yuan as their emperor. During the fusion process, the Yellow Emperor took a part of the tribal totems and formed the totem of the people of Huaxia, the dragon, but that was what was recorded in human history. In the dragon race's inherited memories, the winged dragon wasn't the Yellow Emperor's subordinate. The relationship between the two was more like that of an ally, not the so-called superior and subordinate relationship in the legends. The fusion talisman of Pusan was the winged dragon's request after its success. It redefined the dragon's image in the eyes of humans, which was the image of a camel's head, deer's horns, rabbit's eyes, ox's ears, snake's neck, snake's belly, carp's scales, eagle's claws, and tiger's palms. The head of a camel was tenacious and indomitable, the horns of a deer were cautious, the eyes of a rabbit were sharp, the ears of an ox were hard-working. In other words, after the winged dragon assisted the Yellow Emperor in unifying the world, it didn't just go to the south to enjoy life without any desires. After the war, the winged dragon directly changed the image of the dragon race in the eyes of humans. The so-called 9 appearances of the divine dragon encompassed almost all the beauty and power of the world in the dragon race. Anything that involved the dragon race would inevitably become lofty and noble. Even the emperor later called himself the true dragon's son of heaven. It was clear that the winged dragon's planning and layout had brought great benefits to the dragon race and itself. The dragon race became the totem of humans. Even at the point of time in Lin Yuan's previous life, after the feudal superstitions had been completely destroyed, the Chinese still considered themselves the descendants of the dragon race. But what about the winged dragon? What did it get? In many of the Taoist books, the winged dragon appeared as the god of creation. Listen? Creation. World. God. Back then, the Yellow Emperor was definitely an existence stronger than the winged dragon. Otherwise, the winged dragon wouldn't have been misunderstood by many as the Yellow Emperor's subordinate. But what about the Yellow Emperor's ending? One of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors summed it up. Was this an identity that could be compared to the god of creation? Even his own daughter, Hidorigami, was gradually demonized and even completely degenerated into a demon. The Yellow Emperor could only imprison her. From this, it could be seen that after the fusion talisman Fushan incident, the winged dragon used the dragon totem to harvest an enormous amount of incense power. Even the dragon race of the 4 seas, which had a little bit of influence, could be said to be incomparably powerful. Which place would not pray to the Dragon King when there was a drought? The dragon race's power even extended to the time when the heavenly Tao was hidden and the human Tao was revealed. Although no one knew what happened during this period, the biggest slap in the face for the dragon race in history was when the Jinghe Dragon King was killed by Wei Zheng. A civil official with no cultivation base could have an out-of-body soul in his sleep and kill the Jinghe Dragon King. After that, the Jinghe Dragon King's soul came to Li Shimin for revenge. Li Shimin only ordered Qin Xiong and Yu Qigong to guard the door at night, and directly scared off the Jinghe Dragon King's soul. Although it was hard to say whether the historical materials were true or false, the powerful people who made up stories often met with bad consequences. The story of Wei Zheng slaying the dragon was still passed down. Just from these words, one could imagine how far the dragon race had fallen during that period. Chapter 989. Greetings, ancestral monster Ing Zai. Alien bowed to the water avatar that resembled a western dragon. The monster known as Ing Zai nodded and sneered. Although my god-worshipping sect is not world-renowned, we will never do something that slaps our own faces. Since we have agreed to help, we will not go back on our word. This seat has come today to tell you that the ancestral monster of the dragon bloodline will definitely intervene when the outer sea monsters invade the deep sea. When the time comes, we will also intervene. Even if we cannot defeat the enemy, we will do our best to ensure that the outer sea monsters can return to the outer sea. Mutant Tundin and Du Lin bowed to Ing Zai. Du Lin, in particular, had a look of fear in his eyes. It was as if he was worried that Ing Zai would come after him because of what he had said. This scene made Lin Yuan, who was watching coldly from the sidelines, laugh coldly. No matter which side the ancestral monster was from, they would not easily intervene. These powerhouses, who had been famous for many years, were different from Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan could also erupt with the combat prowess of an ancestral demon by consuming the power of incense. Moreover, once there was a need to use the power of incense, Lin Yuan would never be stingy. Just like the 3 million incense that Lin Yuan had obtained from spreading the words and theories of his previous life, he had used it to summon a big boss to help him. Before that, he had also spent nearly 200 million incense to create the Empress Arsenal to set up the southern cultivation world. But these ancestral monster experts were different from Lin Yuan. They had not cultivated to become true gods, and their lifespans were limited. After so many years, their lifespans had already been exhausted. They could only rely on Joss flame power to prolong their existence because this world was not yet complete and the 3 realms and 6 paths of reincarnation had not yet appeared. They were similar to the Een gods of humans, but they had their own bodies and absolute autonomy. Ordinary monsters and cultivators would expend stellar energy or monster power in battle. On the other hand, most universe-enlightened ancestral demon realm experts didn't exhaust Joss flame energy in battle. To them, it was simply like expending their lives, and a casual move of theirs might cause them to lose a few years of their lifespan. Once Joss flame energy was completely exhausted, then even true gods might fall into deep slumber, whereas the outcome of these false gods was death on the spot. So, unless it was absolutely necessary, the ancestral demon realm experts wouldn't interfere in anything. Unless it was like this battle. Once the dragon bloodline demon beasts and the outer sea demon beasts started fighting, the numbers on both sides would definitely decrease rapidly. At the same time, the ancestral demon realm experts would obtain less and less Joss flames. It could be said that their lives were truly threatened. The mutant was in the Dao initiation realm and might be about to enter the sovereign realm. However, after Lin Yuan's personal observation, he was certain that the mutant was still short of the process of accumulating incense power. Without hundreds of years of hard work and accumulation, it would be difficult to enter the sovereign realm or the transcendent realm. The other 2 leaders were even weaker. They were only in the Monster King realm. With such a combination, they naturally wouldn't know what kind of actions would infuriate the other party's demon ancestor. The god-worshipping religion on the outer sea demon beast side was the same. The source of their incense power was mainly from the outer sea demon beasts. In this battle, almost all of the outer sea demon beasts' youths had gathered to form such a huge team. If too many of them were to die here, they would naturally be affected. God-worshipping religion, Dragon God Temple, Sea Demon Guild's demon ancestor, Lin Yuan's gaze flickered slightly, but he still let out a long sigh. Previously, he was still too hasty. The endless sea might look sweet, but outsiders wouldn't be able to imagine the dangers hidden under this beautiful sea if they weren't personally involved. I have to put the endless sea's matter aside for the time being. Lin Yuan turned his head and looked at Cyrus beside him, and said calmly, "The overall situation is still under your control. However, some of the details and decisions should be left to Jiaoyi. That child isn't stupid, but it will always be under our wings. It will be difficult for it to grow into a true king. So, you just have to grasp the rhythm and don't let the city of trade completely go astray. When I return next time, I will make these arrogant existences pay a painful price. Yes, this subordinate will do his best and not disappoint the Dragon King today. Cyrus bowed slightly and replied in a sincere tone. In the past, Cyrus would most likely infiltrate the city of trade and hold such a treasure in its hands. However, after peeking at part of Lin Yuan's plan, Cyrus decisively gave up those tempting thoughts. This Black Jiao wasn't on the same level as it from the very beginning. Even the second-rate sage that it was a little annoyed with back then was actually a compliment to the current Cyrus. More importantly, Lin Yuan's goal was probably extremely terrifying. Even the West Sea Dragon King, who had only sensed the clash of the three powerful auras, didn't dare to make a move. They didn't dare to provoke Lin Yuan, let alone Cyrus, the demon king that was in the city of trade at that time. Sky Martial Continent? Endless Sea? Ha! Perhaps this level of achievement was a supreme hegemony in the eyes of most humans and demon beasts, but to Lin Yuan, this kind of low-level world wasn't worthy of those terrifying existences behind it. Compared to being a country bumpkin in the Sky Martial Continent, Cyrus wanted more to cross over the Sky Demon and see other worlds. It wanted to find those experts who had left their mark in history and finally resolutely stepped out of the Sky Gate, disappearing without a trace. From Cyrus's point of view, the guardians of the Gate of Heaven were nothing more than a bunch of cowards. The experts who had left never returned, so they assumed that there was endless danger outside the Gate of Heaven. Even if they reached the limits of the Tianwu world, they would still die in another world after leaving the Gate of Heaven. However, they hadn't even found or recovered a single corpse so far. Didn't that mean that those experts who had left the Sky Martial Continent hadn't died, but were unwilling to return because they had seen an even more vast world? Cyrus, who was aware of its own aptitude, knew that with its own strength, it might not be able to step into a higher realm or leave the Sky Martial Continent in its lifetime. However, if it followed Lin Yuan, that would be a different story. How difficult could it be for an expert who could kill ancestral demon realm experts like killing dogs to create an existence above the demon king realm? Lin Yuan nodded slightly. His pitch-black body shot forward like a sharp arrow, easily breaking through the restraints of the sea as he rushed in the direction of the Sky Martial Continent. Chapter 990. Half a month later. The northern frontier, Shunning City. Li Zhong looked at the busy cultivators of the Ministry of Works with bloodshot eyes. His breath was chaotic and his qi and blood were weak. He looked very dispirited, as if he had not rested for days. Without rest for a few days, a mortal would indeed become dispirited and dispirited. However, for cultivators, even if they did not eat, drink, or sleep for half a year, they would not show any abnormalities on the surface. Therefore, Li Zhong's current appearance was definitely much weaker than he looked. Because not long ago, a mysterious expert named Qi claimed to be an old friend of the Dragon King and sent a piece of extremely terrifying information. The existence that spread the method of killing the immortals in the northern frontier did not use the nine-tailed phantom body. However, they did belong to the Fox clan, but not the Fox clan of this world. The Fox clan, which was considered a big clan in the Hengduan Mountains, was not even qualified to carry the shoes of those great demons. Qingqiu, Tushan, Su, and Pure Fox. They came from the four great fox clans of the primitive world. According to the expert named Qi, the great demons that secretly interfered in the matter of the immortals were either from the Su clan or the Chenghe clan. These two clans had many demons that brought disaster to the country. For example, the Su clan once had a nine-tailed fox demon named Su Daji, who wreaked havoc in a powerful country called Inshang. Although King Zhou of Inshang was a human, his cultivation was tyrannical and he was known as the Human King. No matter if it was immortals, gods, or demons that entered the territory of Inshang, they all had to obediently bow their heads. Whoever dared to be presumptuous would die. However, such a powerful country was ultimately defeated by a fox demon. Thinking about it carefully, Li Zhong felt that it was inconceivable and terrifying at the same time. The other Chenghe clan was not simple either. Although there was no famous great demon mentioned by Qi in history, they worked together with a human called Han Qi to destroy a country called Yu country and killed a mighty person called Yi. These two fox clans were famous for bringing disaster to the country. Now, one of them, or even both of them, had their eyes on the northern frontier. Li Zhong did not know about the four great fox clans, but he knew about the existence of the nine-tailed fox. This was because there was a legend about the nine-tailed fox in the Sky Martial continent. However, it was only a legend. Even in the era when those unknown almighty people were cultivating in the Sky Martial continent, the Fox clan only had seven-tailed fox demons. These seven-tailed fox demons would often choose to leave the Sky Martial continent through the gate of heaven and disappear without a trace. However, there were rumors circulating within the Fox clan that the reason why the seven-tailed fox demons left was to pursue the eight-tailed fox Dao, which was stronger than the seven-tailed fox demons. There were even rumors that there was a nine-tailed fox demon above the eight-tailed fox demons. The seven-tailed fox demon could be said to be an almighty person who could turn the world upside down with a wave of his hand. According to the legends, the eight-tailed fox demon was undying and indestructible. Even if it was completely destroyed, it could be resurrected. At most, one of its tails would be broken, and it would be temporarily weakened to the seven-tailed fox demon's strength. The even more terrifying nine-tailed fox demon was only a legend. As for the true terrifying might, those ancient creatures did not even dare to think about it. The so-called secret technique of the Fox clan, nine-tailed illusion, did not refer to the real nine-tailed fox demon. It was just a description of how powerful this illusion technique was. In reality, in the Tianwu world, if a nine-tailed fox demon was truly born, it could exterminate countless experts with a single breath. Why would it need to use a mere illusion technique to bewitch the masses? Li Zhong had never imagined that the legendary nine-tailed fox demon actually existed. Furthermore, in the wilderness, there was more than one nine-tailed fox demon. Furthermore, they were not considered powerful characters. Even if they could bring calamity to a country, they were just pawns in the hands of others. Although he did not know what kind of existence the wilderness was, Li Zhong was very clear that whether it was the wilderness or the four great fox clans, to the current northern frontier, it would be a complete and utter disaster. You've been busy for so long. Have you gained anything? Li Zhong reached out to grab the Minister of Work's sleeve and asked in a tone that was close to pleading. He did not know what they would face in the northern frontier. However, he was certain that the Blackwater Dragon King, who was hidden in the northern frontier, definitely had an extraordinary background. For the sake of their current plan, they could only make preparations with the help of the Dragon King's guidance. Otherwise, when disaster struck, they would be no different from ants. They would not even have the chance to struggle. The Minister of Works was silent for a moment before slowly saying, "We have gained something. However, I'm afraid that you won't believe me if I say it." Having said that, he gently waved his sleeve, indicating for Li Zhong to follow him. The two came in front of a huge glass window. The Minister of Works raised his finger and pointed at the figure in the observation cabin. The figure was still squirming and struggling after being wrapped up by layers of bandages covered with dense black runes. He said, "This guy is one of the undyings that we caught before. Because we happened to be studying it at that time, Lei Fan did not rescue it. So far, we have not caught any maternal undyings. The ones sent by the Black Water Army were basically the original residents of the northern frontier. They were transformed into undyings after being affected by the death aura after they died. We could not find anything from them at all. Having said that, he reached out and pressed the glass window in front of him and said in a deep voice, "Only this guy is our last hope. Although we have done all kinds of experiments to kill it, all of them ended in failure. After receiving your order to modify, we changed our strategy and carried out all kinds of research on this special undyings, such as dissecting and slicing. In the end, we found a kind of liquid in its body. After that, we sealed it and waited for the Dragon King to return before making a decision." "Liquid?" Li Zhong paused for a moment. His eyes were bloodshot as he growled almost hysterically, "What kind of liquid did you extract? You actually hid it from me? If I hadn't been here every day, you would never have told me." The Minister of Works let Li Zhong grab his collar and growl. After Li Zhong calmed down a little, he gave his deputy a look and continued, "Yes, I didn't intend to tell you about our experiment. This is just in case. You know the nature of the Ministry of Works. Once we start work, we will never leave the Ministry of Works before we have a thorough research result. But you are different. You are the king of the northern frontier. You have your own things to do. We have no authority to force you to stay in the Ministry of Works to keep this secret." Chapter 991. "I can temporarily hand the matters at hand over to Li Xian to handle, so, can you tell me now?" Li Zhong slowly loosened his grip on the minister's collar, and the chaotic aura on his body gradually calmed down. His abnormalities were basically all due to stress, and since the Ministry of Works had already produced results, he did not need to feel so much pressure anymore. The black water of the underworld. The Minister of Works suddenly opened his mouth, interrupting Li Zhong's words. Li Zhong's pupils suddenly shrank, and the aura on his body that had gradually calmed down with much difficulty actually showed signs of becoming chaotic again. The Minister of Works was shocked, and quickly realized that this king of the northern frontier was about to go crazy. "Don't panic, listen to what I have to say, but remember what I have to say. After knowing all this, before the Dragon King returns, I will not let you leave the Ministry of Works. I'm sorry, this is a serious matter, and if you insist on leaving, then I will have to resort to emergency measures and kill you right here and now." The Minister of Works stretched out his hand to pat Li Zhong's gradually tensing muscles, and suddenly said, "Actually, you have all overlooked one thing, and that is the timing of the appearance of the Undying, or rather, because of the terrifying threat that the Undying brought, you have all subconsciously overlooked the matters of the past, and thought that the Undying was another matter, and not an extension of the previous matter. And Lei Fan, Luo Su and the likes had used this timing to deliberately lead you all in the wrong direction, and sank deeper and deeper." Overlooked? Some time in the past? Lei Fan, Luo Su? Deliberately led? A series of key words flashed across Li Zhong's mind. Very quickly, Li Zhong reacted, and said in a hoarse voice, "What you mean is, the Undying was actually not created by Lei Fan and the existence behind him to cause chaos in the northern frontier, but a certain matter in the northern frontier that was not handled properly, and thus caused trouble in the future. Instead, Lei Fan and Luo Su used it as their protection and led our investigation in the wrong direction, so this matter is the elixir of immortality?" Yes, the appearance of the Undying is indeed a consequence of the elixir of immortality, and this is the result of your investigation being wrong. Back then, the Dragon King had given the Ministry of Works some samples of the elixir of immortality for research, and according to our research, the so-called core of the elixir of immortality is actually a kind of liquid similar to the Dragon King's nether realm black water, and the appearance of the elixir is actually a kind of special metal, and the purpose of its existence is to imprison to imprison the core of the elixir of immortality, because our investigation showed that although the liquid in the core of the elixir of immortality is similar to the nether realm black water, the former has an unimaginable activity, and rather than saying that it is a kind of special liquid, it is better to say that it is a kind of special life form. On the other hand, the nether realm black water that Lord Dragon King left in the northern frontier, although it can also form all kinds of undying creatures, in the end it is a dead object, and if there is no external force to activate it, it is really just a pool of stagnant water that will eat everything that enters it. And those who consume the elixir of immortality will gradually develop all kinds of violent, crazy, and hateful negative emotions, and they need to constantly consume the elixir of immortality to suppress these negative emotions, or else they will die an extremely painful death. Your investigation stopped here, and you believed that the Sky Demon used the elixir of immortality to control part of the officials in the northern frontier, and force them to work for him. Furthermore, in your subsequent cleanup operation, you rescued and killed all the people who consumed the elixir of immortality. Think again, the place where you buried the bodies of those who consumed the elixir of immortality is today's forest of hungry ghosts and the plains of earth, right? After thinking about this, it is naturally not difficult to associate the so-called undying with the origins of this. The Minister of Works sneered and said, I believe that the so-called undying is actually a side effect of the elixir of immortality. Without continuing to consume the elixir of immortality to maintain the activity of the mysterious liquid, the people who consume the elixir of immortality will naturally be completely dominated by all kinds of negative emotions, and thus turn into monsters. In addition, the elixir of immortality has a characteristic similar to the nether realm black water, so what appears in front of you is an undying monster. Hearing this, Li Zhong had a complicated expression on his face. After all, the elixir of immortality was an extremely evil thing. Other than the initial use of the elixir of immortality to lure out the other elixir of immortality, the rest of the elixir of immortality and the elixir of immortality had been dealt with by Li Zhong as soon as possible. He did not even think about what kind of trouble it would cause in the future. However, from the looks of it now, the undying that ran rampant in the northern frontier today were most likely the people who consumed the elixir of immortality and turned into monsters. No, this doesn't make sense. Li Zhong quickly shook his head again, biting his lip and said, Even if your explanation can explain the origin of the undying, how do you explain Lei Fan and the batch of undying that first appeared possessing spiritual intelligence? Then have you ever thought about why Lei Fan did not hesitate to expose his own existence and his trump card, Luo Su, in order to save those undying that possessed spiritual intelligence, despite knowing that we are unable to kill the undying? Why? Why is it that those undying that they painstakingly saved never appeared again, and instead, a large number of undying with low spiritual intelligence appeared? Is it because you can't think of the reason behind this, or is it because you don't dare to think of the reason behind this? Actually, you are very afraid, aren't you, Li Zhong? You are afraid that when you were playing games with Lei Fan and Luo Su, you made several mistakes in succession, which led to the current disaster that has befallen the northern frontier. If you can't think of it, I don't mind telling you, because the amount of the elixir of immortality is extremely limited. That black water behind the scenes had initially gathered all the elixir of immortality and created a batch of highly intelligent undying. Using this as the foundation, he created the Northern Restoration Society to secretly sabotage the northern frontier. Under the joint efforts of all of you, the Northern Restoration Society was destroyed, Lei Fan was exposed, Luo Su was exposed, and you even captured those undying that first appeared and brought them back to the northern frontier, didn't you? In fact, the activity in this liquid will be constantly depleted, and when the activity level is extremely high, the transformed monsters will also reveal spiritual intelligence that is not inferior to ordinary people. However, the higher the activity level, the faster it will be depleted. Therefore, after accomplishing his goal, the existence behind the scenes must retrieve the first undying, kill them, and extract the elixir of immortality from their bodies, and use it to create more undying, which is the various low-level undying that we faced later on. The Minister of Works reached out his hand and knocked on the glass window in front of him, saying coldly, "This first undying was like that. At this moment, its spiritual intelligence has degenerated to the level of a 3-year-old child, and it can no longer communicate with us. At the same time, it has shown an extremely strong desire to attack, so I had no choice but to seal it away." Chapter 992. The Immortals were just a group of people whose consciousness had been wiped away. Their bodies were driven by a special liquid similar to the black water of the underworld. That was why they had the desire to attack like wild beasts and had the characteristic of being unkillable. It turned out that from the beginning to the end, the so-called Immortals were just mistakes caused by a moment of negligence. Instead, they were used by the other party as an existence like a protective umbrella. It had always involved the attention of the entire Northern Frontier Intelligence Agency, constantly leading them away from the truth. "I'm such a king idiot," Li Zhong cursed in his heart. But very quickly Li Zhong raised his eyebrows and said, "But even if you explain it this way, logically speaking, there is no problem. But how do you explain Lei Fan? He had clearly been killed by the cultivators of the sect of the Blood God. I have personally verified his corpse. But now, not only has Lei Fan been resurrected as an immortal, he has also stirred up a storm in the northern frontier, not allowing us to have a moment of peace. I never said that Lei Fan was not an immortal." The Minister of Works sighed and tilted his head to the side to say, "What I mean is, the Immortals are existences similar to medicine men. Lei Fan is essentially no different from the other Immortals. It's just that we don't know how much of the elixir of immortality the other party still has in their hands. So, they can continuously feed Lei Fan medicine to maintain the activity of the elixir of immortality in his body, so that he will not degenerate into a low-level immortal without spiritual intelligence. As for the Immortals under our control, because they have not taken medicine for a very long time, the activity of the elixir of immortality in their bodies has continuously turned them into monsters." Hiss! Li Zhong sucked in a breath of cold air. His eyes flashed and he asked doubtfully, "According to what you said, does it mean that the one who is hiding behind the scenes and making use of the Immortals to plot against us is still the Sky Demon?" "It's possible, but not likely." The Minister of Works clasped his hands together, yawned, and said, "If the Sky Demon is behind all this, then he should know about the situation on the northern frontier. As long as he launches a fierce attack while we are divided to defend against the undead, our front line will soon collapse. Especially since the Styx creatures left behind by the Dragon King are almost all fighting against the undead, the threat to him is further reduced. At this time, he chose not to attack the northern frontier, but to turn around and attack the south. Isn't this clearly giving us a chance to breathe? Furthermore," after yawning, the Minister of Works opened his bloodshot eyes and said, "When we completely dissected the undead, we found that there are no organs or bones in the undead's body. They are more like a kind of monster with only flesh and blood. Besides instinct, they don't even have any emotions. The Sky Demon can't possess such an existence. In other words, if the northern frontier falls and becomes a paradise for the undead, this area will have no value to the Sky Demon." "That's an interesting way to put it." Suddenly, Lin Yuan's voice sounded behind the two. The Minister of Works and Li Zhong turned around with a look of surprise. The Ministry of Works was the department with the highest level of secrecy in the entire northern frontier. Besides Li Zhong and Lin Yuan, no one else had the authority to know any information about the Ministry of Works. and the location of the Ministry of Works was not fixed. Just like the safe house set up by the Imperial Secret Service, the Ministry of Works would move every once in a while, and after the move, the members of the Night Busters would disguise themselves as Ministry of Works personnel to continue the operation. And other than not researching any secrets, the fake Ministry of Works was no different from the Ministry of Works. So if one wanted to find the real location of the Ministry of Works, unless Li Zhong or Lin Yuan took the initiative to tell them, they would find nothing. Previously, Luo Su had been trying to find out information about the Ministry of Works, but the results were not great. If not for the undead being sent to the Ministry of Works for research, Lei Fan and Luo Su's operation would not have endangered the Ministry of Works at all. Lin Yuan's body floated in the air in front of the glass window. He glanced at the undead who were wrapped up like mummies, and his gaze was slightly solemn. At the beginning, he also thought that these undead were the handiwork of some almighty person related to the underworld. But if such an existence really appeared, the vacant position of the underworld king would immediately have an owner. After all, the heavenly sovereign had already appeared. If another underworld king appeared, the Sky Martial world would be able to create 3 realms and make itself into a complete world. So the will of the world chose Lin Yuan because Lin Yuan had a higher possibility of becoming the underworld king. It was not that Lin Yuan was the only choice, and after eliminating the first possibility, there were other methods to transform the Sky Martial world into the underworld. That meant that the existence behind the scenes was very likely to be a god of the underworld, and had used the Nether River ancestors' Nether Blood Sea or something similar. But the appearance of a god of the underworld from another world in the Sky Martial world was tantamount to a declaration of war against the will of the world. Even if it had a supreme divine ability, it would have to first subdue the will of the world, or else it would not be able to use the underworld method. That was why Lin Yuan had always been suspicious. These undyings that had suddenly appeared were very likely to be existences similar to medicine men. Because the first batch of undyings that had appeared did not conform to the 3 types of undyings: corpse, bone, and soul. They were more like cultivators that could not be killed by conventional method. The northern frontier, the sky demon, and even the untainted desolation creatures were just pawns in the hands of the other party. I'm beginning to wonder about this person's identity. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and muttered. He can mobilize the members of the Pure Fox and Yusu Fox clan, and also use the Nether Blood Sea to cultivate medicine men similar to the untainted. He doesn't even care about untainted desolation creatures like Hanba, but he is not a untainted desolation creature. So how did this guy know about the secrets of the untainted desolation world? Even I don't know how to use the Nether Blood Sea. I'm afraid that other than the Blood River ancestor, only the Sky Demon God knows how to use it. He is in existence on the same level as Hongjun without the support of the Heavenly Tao. That's right, that mysterious existence was most likely not a untainted desolation creature. Because with such a terrifying existence surrounding him, even if Lin Yuan had the will of the world and the origin of the Heavenly Tao to protect him, he would still be ruthlessly bitten off a piece of flesh by the other party. If his reaction was not fast enough, it was not impossible for him to be killed by the other party's scheme. Based on this premise, if this mysterious existence was an untainted desolation creature, then when they were in the Endless Sea, Hongjun would not have sent a consciousness across the endless space in an attempt to kill Lin Yuan. This huge threat came from another world, but knew the secrets of the untainted desolation world. Chapter 993. If that outer god is not a primitive creature, but knows the secret that only the Sky Demon God can know, I think there is only one possibility left. Although it is unlikely, Didn't you say in your previous life that after eliminating all the impossibilities, the remaining answer will definitely be the truth no matter how unbelievable it is? Amazing, Tong Tian, you are amazing! As Lin Yuan muttered to himself, a line of words slowly appeared in Lin Yuan's mind. Lin Yuan was confused. However, the doubt only lasted for a moment, and a look of realization flashed across Lin Yuan's eyes. As everyone knew, sect leader Tong Tian, who was one of the Sanqing sects, respected education regardless of background. During the God's investiture tribulation, the Ren school and the Chan school looked down on the Jie school, thinking that the subordinates of sect leader Tong Tian were all hairy and ovally-eyed. Although the three sects had expressed their participation in the God's investiture tribulation at the same time, the Ren school and the Chan school had joined forces to target the disciples of the Jie school several times. Sect leader Tong Tian, who was angry, did not hesitate to fight with the Heavenly Lord Yuanshi and the Heavenly Lord Dao De, who were also Sanqing sects. He did not even regret the destruction of the Jie school. Especially in the last battle of the 10,000 Immortals formation, except for the incongruence Divine Mother, who was not tainted by the tribulation aura, who was ordered by sect leader Tong Tian to wait for an opportunity to escape unscathed. The rest of the disciples either died or were taken away as mount. It could be said that their fates were extremely miserable. However, speaking of which, it was natural for the Jie school to be destroyed. After all, among the three sects, only the Jie school did not have a magic treasure that could suppress fate. Moreover, the Grandmaster of Heaven had used the power of the Jie school to fight against the Ren school and the Chan school at the same time. Even the Western sect had joined in the fun. They had sent away countless disciples of the Jie school in the chaotic battle to strengthen the foundation of the Western sect. Among the 6 sages under Hongjun, except for Nuwa, who had always stood aloof from worldly affairs, almost all of them had participated in the encirclement of the sect leader of Tong Tian. As an indestructible sage, the sect leader of Tong Tian should have known that his defeat was inevitable when the immortal-slaying sword formation was seized. Otherwise, he would not have let the incongruence Divine Mother escape in advance. Since he knew that he would lose, it was not impossible that he did not know that the long-eared Dingguang immortal had already become a traitor and was unwilling to wave the 6-soul banner at the cost of his own soul being destroyed. However, he still did not replace him and insisted on letting the long-eared Dingguang immortal wield the 6-soul banner, laying the groundwork for his own defeat. This kind of behavior was tantamount to hammering the nail into his coffin. However, judging from the abnormal behavior of the system during this period of time, the sect leader of Tong Tian might not have really lost. Sanqing, as the supreme deity in the history of Taoism, could be said to be the twin brothers of Sanqing. It was impossible for there to be an unsolvable death between the three of them, especially the leader of the Ren sect. He had always been the leader of Sanqing, the big brother of the Tongtian and the primeval lord of Tongtian. Even if his 2 younger brothers quarreled with each other, the Grand Lord of Tongtian would play the role of the peacemaker. The war between the Jie sect and the Chan sect was because the disciples of the primeval lord of Tongtian had repeatedly injured and even killed the disciples of the Jie sect, and even humiliated them. The sect leader of Tongtian had said to the primeval lord of Tongtian, "Senior brother primeval lord of Tongtian, your disciples of the Chan sect do not care about the brotherhood of fellow disciples, repeatedly injuring the disciples of the Jie sect, and humiliating the disciples of the Jie sect. Aren't you saying that I am also a beast? If I am a beast, then what are you, the primeval lord of Tongtian?" Therefore, because of the physical and verbal conflicts between the disciples of the Chan sect and the Jie sect, the sect leader of Tongtian and the primeval lord of Tongtian completely broke up. In the process, the Grand Lord of Tongtian did not show the appearance of a big brother. Instead, he took sides and led the disciples of the Ren sect to join forces with the Chan sect, and directly destroyed the Jie sect. What was the reason that made Sanqing, who was like a brother of the primeval lord of Tongtian, break up? Was it really because the Grand Lord of Tongtian and the primeval Lord of Tongtian loved their disciples and did not want their disciples to be immortals who were ordered by others on the list, so they joined forces to fight against the disciples of the Jie sect? What was the reason that the Grand Lord of Tongtian did not even persuade them, but directly joined forces with the primeval Lord of Tongtian to bully him? Was it really because of the non-discrimination education of the Grand Lord of Tongtian that stimulated the Grand Lord of Tongtian and the primeval Lord of Tongtian? Thinking of this, Lin Yuan suddenly had an idea and murmured, "It's like this. It's actually like this." After the battle between the three sects, the Jie sect was destroyed. The sect leader of Tongtian led the remaining disciples to fight and retreat. He once said, "How can I have the face to control the Azure Palace after this defeat? Anyway, I will not rest until I work. Now I will return to the palace and establish the earth, water, fire, and wind again. Let's change the world." After that, the sect leader of Tongtian was summoned by Hongjun and given a fatal red pill. From then on, he rarely appeared. However, thinking about it, Hongjun's pill did not kill the sect leader of Tongtian. The reason why the sect leader of Tongtian rarely appeared was probably because he had already established the earth, wind, water, and fire and formed his own world. After forming his own world, the world would definitely not be perfect. Saints like Hongjun could not descend into it. Even if the world was perfected later, the sect leader of Tongtian, who was supported by the heavenly Tao of the New World, would no longer be in existence that could be controlled by Hongjun. Almost all the big shots in the untainted land were the gods of creation. Perhaps they were stimulated by the fact that the sect leader of Tongtian had successfully broken free from the identity of a prisoner. The Grand Supreme and Premier joined hands to destroy the Jie sect. Except for some unlucky ones, most of the disciples of the Jie sect did not die. They either became immortals on the list of deification, were captured as mounts, or were transported by the Western sect. Anyway, most of them survived. Obviously, this was not in line with the sect leader of Tongtian's posture of taking out the Six Souls banner and fighting with the 10,000 Immortals formation. Therefore, the Grand Supreme and Premier were actually hiding from Hongjun. They secretly helped the sect leader of Tongtian to complete some plans by sending the disciples of the Jie sect to the list of calamities. They made the sect leader of Tongtian establish the earth, wind, water, and fire and form his own world. From then on, he broke free from the identity of a prisoner. Just like how countless creatures of the untainted land had used the great tribulation of heaven and earth to break the untainted land several times to escape, there was no difference between the two things in essence. They were both trying to get rid of Hongjun's control. Thinking about it this way, most of the disciples of the Jie sect survived. The sudden betrayal of the long-eared Dingguang immortal, who was in charge of the Six Souls banner, made sense. The three brothers were acting from the beginning. They did not mean to fight to the death at all. However, after the lesson of the sect leader of Tongtian, Hongjun was obviously on guard. After establishing the journey to the west, he set up the theory of yin and yang and the five virtues, planned to kill Haotian, and supported Zhang Biren to become the Jade Emperor. Everything went smoothly. After that, the secular world was derived until the Tang dynasty. The Western sect suddenly intervened and completely shattered the Wukong in the Grand Supreme's heart. The Grand Supreme was ruthlessly beaten by the Grand Supreme. Therefore, he could not transcend the untainted land and was still a prisoner under Hongjun. Throughout the untainted land, since Hongjun merged with the Tao of Heaven, the only mighty person who got rid of the identity of a prisoner was the sect leader of Tongtian. Amazing! You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.